Story 1. I squared up with my son and disowned him after his girlfriend came to me crying, stating that he has been hitting her. I need some advice and judgment. I, 49 a single father of 3 children. My wife passed away of cancer when my oldest was 13. It was very difficult for me to raise them. I would work 12 to 16-hour shifts and would not be home most of the time. I was thankful that my kids were strong and independent. I would like to give a little background on myself. I grew up in an abusive household. My dad would physically abuse my mom and also beat my siblings and me. I have 4 younger siblings, 3 of them being girls. I was the oldest and would try to take the beatings for them when I was old enough and strong enough. I squared up against my father. I did so as many times as I needed to. I never let him put his hands on them. My father ended up going to prison for battery, and we moved states. My kids' current ages are 24 21 17 My daughters still live with me since they are going to college, but my son has moved out and made his life. My son has gotten a girlfriend, and I have met her. She is a sweet, loving, and soft-natured girl, and I genuinely like her. She reminds me of my wife when she was younger. I invite my son and his girlfriend over for lunch and dinners quite often. They have now been dating for 3 years, and she would sometimes come over and help my daughters out with college stuff or just come over to hang out with them. I love her as family and have told her so. For weeks ago, she came over, and when I opened the door, the first thing I saw was that she had a busted lip and a black eye, and her eye seemed to be dyed in blood. I immediately took her in and helped her. My daughters were also alarmed when they saw her, and when we asked her what happened, she told us that my son was the one who did it to her. I cried at hearing that, and I hugged her and begged her for my forgiveness. She told us all about it and apologized for not telling us sooner. This wasn't the first time he had hit her. I've asked her if she has told her parents or the cops, and she said that we were the first people she felt like going to. I cried. I reassured her that she was safe there and not to worry. I asked my daughters to clean up a spare bed for her as she would be staying. I cannot describe how I was feeling, but you guys can imagine it. I spent hours just staring at the black TV screen, looking at my reflection. A few days after she came to us, I invited my son over for dinner. I had her consent and knowledge to do so first. My son came over, and I instructed my daughters to keep her in their rooms and to pretend they weren't there when my son knocked on my door. And I saw him again. I felt sick, and my blood boiled, but I kept my composure and we sat down to eat. I kept looking at his hands and knuckles, and there were faint scrapes and marks. I asked my son basic questions, trying to seem normal and nice, but the whole time I didn't see him as my son anymore. I saw him as my father, and I didn't like that feeling. He acted normal until I asked him how everything was with his girlfriend, and he choked on his food for a moment and told me everything is fine. She's just busy with work, and I haven't seen her in a while. I just nodded and said, "Oh, that's nice. Glad she's doing okay." We finished eating and I washed the dishes. I stood right next to him and asked why he was beating his girlfriend. I said, "I think it's about time you stop bullshitting me about your girlfriend." He asked me what I was talking about, and I told him to stand up and put his hands up. I knew everything, and I was going to show him what it's like to be the weaker person. Before he could say another word, I swung at him, told him that this was the real deal. I did not hold back. I was going to teach my son what it feels like to get beat since he thought it was okay. I told him to keep his hands up and to defend himself. We fought, but I, of course, was going to be the last one standing. I asked him how it felt to be weak, to be on the other end of it. He told me to stop, but I asked him if he stopped when she begged him to. I didn't stop beating him until his girlfriend came downstairs and screamed at me to stop. He looked horrified at seeing her. I told him that he was lucky she didn't tell her dad because her dad would have made him bury his own grave. That he was lucky no one told the cops because people in jail or prison aren't fond of men who beat women. That he was lucky I was not putting him down like the animal he is. I told him how disgusting I felt being the father of a man who beats his girlfriend. That he was no longer part of this family and to get the hell out of my house. That he was a disappointment to everyone in this house. Seeing how I left him reminded me of how she came to me. I tossed him some napkins and told him to clean himself up on the way to whatever shithole he came from. I cried once he limped out of the front door. I told his girlfriend that moving forward was her choice, and I would support her if she chose to stay here. She was more than welcome to, but if she chose to continue her relationship with him, then I would be doing random welfare checks. I told her how sorry I was that something so horrible happened to her, and that it was my fault. It has been a few weeks since the fight. I didn't realize I had a broken nose, but that is okay. She chose to end the relationship with him, and she has been staying with us. I feel like shit. I keep seeing the red stains on the couch and carpet, and I keep asking myself if I did the right thing, if there were other options. I no longer had a son, and that hurt me. I do not know if I did the right thing. I've just been staring at my reflection on the TV. Update. Hello again, people of Reddit. There were a lot of comments and many questions were asked. One in particular that I found very interesting and even showed my daughters was what would have been my plan if my son won. My daughters have instructed me to quote the great Kanye, "I guess we'll never know." I'm not sure if that's the saying, but I got that out the way now. There were a lot of you guys who recommended I reach out to my son, so I did yesterday. We agreed that I would go over to his apartment. I told my daughters and the ex that I would be going today to their brother's place. I asked Thee if she wanted me to grab some small things that she left over there. I went over to his place at 8 o'clock in the morning so we could get it out of the way as soon as we could. He shook my hand, but he kept his gaze low. His injuries seemed to be fine and were healing up nicely. He led me into his apartment, and it was pretty messy. There were a lot of trash bags piled up, and some of the walls had little dents in them. I mentioned this because I mentioned that I saw scrape marks on his hands earlier. We made small talk first, and then I brought up the idea of attending therapy, but he shot me down. I told him that we needed to talk about his ex and his actions. He said, "I'm guessing she told you everything, right?" I told him yes and asked him for the entire truth. Pretty much went like this. He lost his job 8 months ago after a huge layoff and was struggling with the bills, so his ex had to cover for him. He felt like a loser compared to her because of it. He couldn't find a job, and when she asked him about it, he snapped at her for trying to help him. That's pretty much how it started. After that, he just found it easy to smack her every time he felt less than her or if she made him look bad. I asked him a lot of questions, some vague, some detailed, but for the most part, it confirmed every story his ex had told us, so she wasn't lying to us. I told him that I was sorry I didn't hear him out at first, but that it was probably for the better that I didn't know the pathetic reasons he had for doing what he did. He did not apologize back or show any signs that he was remorseful for what he did. We continued to talk about it, and things got very heated. He kept on making excuses for himself and trying to justify what he did. I told him under no conditions was it okay for him to beat his girlfriend just because life got hard for him and things weren't going his way. It does not excuse his shitty actions. My son stood up and asked me why I couldn't have his back or take his side. I got up and asked him, "In what way was I supposed to have your side?" I would in no way support his actions, that he was full of shit for even having the audacity to think I would support him beating his girlfriend. Each time I tried to give him advice or anything related to self-improving, he would get angry. Things continued to escalate, and I told him that unless he got his life and himself under control, he was not allowed near his sisters or my home. He continued to say that even now I only cared for his ex and not him. I told him to not play the poor victim and that he made his bed and now he has to lay in it. He cannot continue to blame others for his actions, much less think it was okay to do what he did. He was no longer a child but a grown man who made his choices, that every choice had its consequences. I asked him for his ex's things, and he told me that he broke them and showed me where they were. They were indeed smashed into pieces. I told him again how ashamed I was of him for being like this and told him that he needed to get help, that he needed to take control of his life again and needed to change. If he continued to act and do things like this, he will end up in jail or dead, that he had to pull himself together for his sake. He told me to go EFF myself, and so I did. I picked up his ex's broken things and put them in a bag before I left. Update 2. Since then, my son has been texting me nasty things, and my daughters have also told me that he has been asking them where his ex is, claiming he wants to see her. My siblings came over this weekend for a cookout I was hosting. My son wasn't invited. I told my family about the situation, and they all agreed that my son turned out to be more like our father. We joked that we always expected one of the guys to be his replica. My brother and we all shared our crappiest experiences with our father, and we answered more questions about our childhood to the ex and my daughters. My mom spent most of the time with the ex and my daughters talking about the dangers of men and whatnot. I thought it was ironic, but it is my mom, and I can't say no to her. Even though I am 49, I couldn't even tell her to stop telling my daughters about how much trouble me and my brother used to cause. A couple of hours into the cookout, the women were in the living room doing their thing while we guys were working in the garage fixing one of the cars. We heard loud banging, and my sisters were yelling at us to get in there because some drunk guy was trying to kick down the door. It was my son. It wasn't too hard to realize that it was him because he was yelling the ex's name and yelling at her to open the door and to stop being a B-word. I told the women to just get away from the door. I opened the door and shoved him out of the door when he tried to force himself in. I told him to get the hell away from the door and to stop acting like an idiot or else someone was going to call the cops on him. I told him that he was not allowed near the house. He just told me to shut up and to let him see her. I told him that under no circumstances would he be allowed near any of the women, let alone his ex, to leave because he was drunk, and I offered to call an Uber for him since I didn't want to drive drunk. My brother-in-law came out to see what was happening, and my son ended up throwing a beer bottle at him. Not the best accuracy since it hit the window. My son just kept on getting aggressive and violent and started to approach me. The whole time he was just yelling at me to let him see her and that he wanted to talk but only to her. His tantrum lasted about 10 minutes until the ex peeked out the window, which resulted in him yelling, "I knew you were in there," and another beer bottle being thrown again, but this time it was accurate and it almost gave her a few facial scars with the broken glass from the window. My brother came out at that point, and we both stood in front of him and told him to leave or we would and call the police or knock him the hell out if he continued to pose a threat to us. Long story short, my son lunged at us. It was a whole ordeal and a public show. My brother held him in a chokehold until he was knocked out. My mom came out, phone in hand, and dialed 911. The police took a while and got there, here in 20 minutes. We just sat on our son until they arrived and explained the whole thing to them. Everyone gave their statements, and I gave the police the Ring camera video as further proof. My son was put in cuffs and taken away. Thank you to everyone who suggested cameras. The ex is okay, and so is everyone else. The women, except my mom, were shaken up. We went back inside and cleaned everything else up, and it was awkward, but we moved on from the incident. My mom was mad that I even allowed him to throw the second bottle. My brother and I went outside and talked about my son and our father. He asked me if maybe I should have let my son see her or at least let him say his piece to her. It was a stupid question and he knew that, but it got me thinking, what if he wanted to apologize? What if he was there to reconcile? But I again escalated it. It's a stupid question, but I would like some outside opinions. I have not visited my son yet, even though it has been 2 days since I saw him get put inside a cop car. Update 3. Hello everyone. As everyone knows, my son got arrested for the scene he caused a couple of days ago. My mother stayed with me and my family while everyone else left to go home. I have fixed both windows that my son broke and have made sure to fix the door because he sort of damaged the hinges. It has been a rough few days, and it has been hard on me. My daughters have visited their brother in jail for me, and they have told me that he looks like a total mess. The ex has told me that she would like to go see how he is doing, and I agreed to it. Yesterday we went to visit him, and he did look terrible. I let his ex talk to him first for a few minutes while I talked to the officers in charge of his case. He was being charged with trespassing, drunk and disorderly, battery, damage to property, possession of illegal narcotics, and a few other charges. It was not fun hearing that your son was going to be locked up for a while. As I waited for the ex to finish talking, I thought a lot about what I would say to him or if I should say anything at all, if I should even show myself to him. It was just very conflicting. When the ex came out, she looked very sad and heartbroken. I didn't ask what they spoke about. I walked in, and he looked very angry to see me. I sat down and asked him how he was doing. We had a basic conversation, but it was going nowhere. I told him that I never wanted to see him locked up or be in this situation. I tried to explain how hurt I was, but he just asked me if I was going to get him out because it was effed up, and I don't deserve to be in here. I tried to be patient and let him talk, but all he was saying was arrogant, ignorant, and stupid. I explained to him that I was only here to see him one last time and that I wasn't going to lift a finger to help him. He got angry and started cussing at me. I told him that he chose this and that his actions had consequences. He started to blame me for his arrest, and I snapped at him. I told him that he could not live his pathetic life blaming his actions and choices on others and that he needed to stop being a pathetic POS. Even after I gave him a reality check and tried to show him humility, even after I tried to offer him help and support, he chose to continue being a terrible person. It got quiet after I snapped at him, and he apologized to me. He told me that he was sorry for what he did, but I told him that it was too late for him to apologize. He started to tear up, but I told him to stop with the poor victim play. He got angry at me and told me the same thing he told me the other time, that I never chose his side and that it was my fault. I told him that his grandpa was the same way, always blaming others for his mistakes and taking out his feelings and failures on the people he loves. I told him the same thing I told my father when he got locked away, that he was just a filthy animal who deserved to be locked up. Everyone in the family will forget that he exists and move on and be happy without him. I will probably retire. His sisters will move out and on with their lives and have their own families. His ex will move on from the horrible experience that he was. The world will continue to turn while he is here locked up. Everyone will move on with their lives. He just sat there quietly with tears running down his face. I felt terrible seeing him like that, but it is what it is. The last thing I told him was that he was officially disowned and that I would be getting a restraining order, that he was no longer my son and to forget about me and his family. He told me that I can go EFF myself before I left. When we got home, I just went straight to the garage and continued to work on my car. I didn't want to speak to anyone. I'm guessing the pressure of the situation finally got to me. Now I'm just typing this as a sort of distraction. I will go to his hearing. I do not know how to feel. I know what I said to him was shitty, and it makes me sad to think that those might be the last words he will ever hear from me. I'm guessing that is what I wanted to ask. Aita? Update 4. Hello everyone. I would like to apologize first for not responding to everyone's comments and to some people's DMs. I've been pretty busy with life, and a lot has happened. Thank you to everyone who has shown support and have commented very nice things. I would like to start off by saying that my daughters are doing excellent. A bit sad after the court hearing, but they are handling it well. I spoke with the ex's family about what had happened and have made peace with them. I think they like me. Not sure. The handshake was extra firm from the father. Her injuries have healed up nicely, and so have mine. My nose ain't funny shaped anymore. Yes, she decided to stay under my wing for a bit longer. My mother has been very much a thorn in my side ever since the incident, which is fine. In all, I'll probably make another AITA post asking on advice about it. I have been feeling down and lazy. I wanted to get out, smell the roses, see something nice. You know what I mean? My son's hearing was a couple of weeks ago, and everyone attended, including me. Despite everything I have said or felt or done, I know I cannot explain my feelings or thought process well, but I had to be there. It was one of the saddest experiences in my life. As much as I hate what my son became, I still loved him, and hearing him get sentenced for 12 years for illegal drug possession and assault and many other charges was not easy. I took a short break from everything just to give me time to deflate. I went on a camping trip with all my daughters. I thought it was fun. Almost got mauled by a bear, but that's part of the fun. I became hood certified, according to my daughters, over the food I made on the grill. I'm going to be honest. I do not know what that means, but it sounds like they liked the food. I have many regrets about how I handled the whole situation. Now that time has passed and the fog in my head was cleared, I did so many things wrong and did so many unnecessary things. I said things that no father should ever tell his son. I make no excuses for my actions. I screwed up and I will live with my choices. I hope and pray that in the future I will be a better man, and so will my son. I want to forgive him. I want him to forgive me. I want his sisters to forgive him. I just want my whole family back. But like everything, life is unpredictable. But I stay optimistic. A lot of people shot me personal DMs, and I have read all of them. For those who I haven't replied to, sorry. I got very shy from how you guys were. My daughters have been skimming the topic of me dating again. I thought it was sweet, but I already had and loved a woman. No one can replace her. I miss her. She probably would have smacked the hell out of me and told me off. Man, I miss you, Ellie. Life has been tough without you, but I've managed to raise a good, strong family. You have lovely and strong daughters. They are doing well and are making their own path in life. Wish you were here to see it. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. My sister insists I can't be in her wedding if I bring my boyfriend of 5 years. I met my boyfriend in college 7 years ago, and we started dating 5 years ago. He is super close and loving with my family. He was there at my niece's births, baptisms, Christmas vacations, etc. We are extremely committed to each other for the long run but don't want to get married until we are financially stable and both our careers are where we want them to be. My sister has been with her fiancé for 2 years and engaged for 6 months. My sister is the type of girl who has dreamed of getting married since she was a little girl. It didn't matter who proposed. She just wanted to be married. I have never cared if I got married or not. As long as I have a good career and a happy relationship, I'm fine. In the beginning of her relationship, she tricked me into going on a double date with her fiancé and his brother. She had said it was dinner with her and a friend, and it was most definitely not. The brother kept making passes at me the whole time, and I told him I had a boyfriend. The whole situation made me uncomfortable. At their engagement party, my boyfriend noticed that the brother wouldn't stop staring at me, and we tried our best to avoid him. Every time I have seen this guy, he has been weird towards me. My sister wanted me, my twin, fraternal, and 2 brothers in her wedding. The wedding is supposed to be next month, in the beginning of May. My sister just told me that I'm going to be walking down the aisle with her fiancé's brother. I told her that he makes me uncomfortable, and I thought I would be walking with my own brother. Apparently, this is something her fiancé is insisting on, and she wants to make him happy. It seems like a pretty weird thing to insist on, and I know it's some scheme between the 2 brothers. My other siblings also thought it was weird and voiced their objections to our sister. She got upset and said this is her wedding and she'll do what she wants. Once I told my boyfriend this, and he was upset for me. He's confident enough in himself that he knows this guy would never be competition. But he knows how uncomfortable I am with this situation. The other day we had family dinner at my mom's house. I took this as an opportunity to bring up the situation with my mother, around my sister. My sister got extremely upset and started crying, saying I was trying to ruin her marriage. I was so confused, as was everyone else, and tried to explain that he makes me and my boyfriend extremely uncomfortable. She then said that I can't bring my boyfriend to her wedding anymore, and if I do, then I'm no longer a bridesmaid. She gave no reason as to why I can't bring him, and my siblings were just as upset, considering they like my boyfriend a lot better than my sister's fiancé. I thought I would give her a few days to calm down and rethink, but she has not changed her mind. My 19-year-old brother's girlfriend is still invited to the wedding. My boyfriend is an incredible guy and has been nothing but kind and generous to my sister. His feelings are hurt, but he still wants me to go to the wedding. I think my sister is being unreasonable, and I will be pretty pissed off at the wedding if my life partner is not there with me. Being her bridesmaid is something I can live without, so should I bring my boyfriend or go without him? Or should I demand that my boyfriend be allowed to come to her wedding and that she's being super unfair? I love my sister, but I don't understand why she's forcing some silly request by her creepy brother-in-law. I don't know what to do, and my family is no help either. Update 1. I posted a few days ago about my sister, F31, saying I, F25, can't be in her wedding if I bring my boyfriend, M26, of 5 years. That post has since been removed, but I will quickly summarize the situation because it has escalated. My sister's fiancé's brother has made several sexual advances at me in the past, and my sister has encouraged it. She tricked me into a double date. My relationship with my boyfriend is very serious, and we will get married sometime in the future. The brother has always made me uncomfortable, and I try to stay as far away from him as I can. My sister then decided that I was going to walk down the aisle with him instead of with my brother. That was the original plan. There are 4 of us siblings, 2 guys, 2 girls. I told her at family dinner I didn't want to do that. Some arguing was involved. She was crying. Then she said I can't bring my boyfriend to the wedding, and if I do, I am no longer a bridesmaid. Most of the comments said I shouldn't go to the wedding at all, but she is my sister, and I don't want to miss her wedding. I went to my parents' house with my brothers and told them about everything the fiancé's brother has done that makes me super uncomfortable and how my sister is disrespecting my relationship. My dad was pretty pissed off about the date stunt that she pulled and is on my side. My mom, however, says that I need to try and resolve this with her because if I am not part of the wedding party, people will talk. I honestly couldn't give a damn about what extended family has to say. My mom called a family meeting and told my sister and my twin to come to the house. My dad asked her why I was no longer walking with my brother, to which she responded saying that it's what her fiancé wants and she just wants to make him happy. I pressed the issue, asking why is this such a big deal for me to walk with him and that he's super weird and I wouldn't be surprised if he tried to assault me. That really pissed her off. She started crying and yelling, saying a bunch of BS, how this is all she's ever wanted and we're trying to ruin her special day, blah blah blah. I was tired of the arguing and just straight up said I'll go to the wedding as a guest. Then I'm leaving before the reception. My twin and younger brother took my side and said they don't want to be in the wedding party if I'm not. This made my sister lose her mind. She was screaming now, calling me a bunch of names that I can't say on the sub, and also calling my boyfriend names. I decided to leave and let my parents calm her down. But before I could walk out, she ran at me and yanked my hair, still screaming. She wouldn't let go, so I yanked hers too, and she let go. She has extensions, and apparently, I pulled them up and ripped some hair out. She tried to grab me again, so I punched her in the face. I didn't mean to hit her. It was just my instant reaction to someone coming at me. So now she has a black eye, a cut on her cheek, and missing some hair. She's absolutely livid because her bachelorette party is next week. My mom is mad at me. My dad is not. My sister is now saying that she's going to press charges against me. Can she actually do that? Or is she just trying to scare me? She's also pissed off because my other siblings won't be in the wedding. She told my mom if I apologize to her and agree to be in the wedding, she'll let me walk with my brother. I feel like that is BS, and she will still make me walk with the fiancé's brother last minute. At this point, I feel like it's not worth the trouble, and I just don't want to go at all. My mom and dad want me to do what she asked because they're paying for the wedding and want all their kids there. My twin and younger brother said they'll do whatever I want to do, but I don't think I should be the reason they don't go. My boyfriend feels like he started all this drama when none of it is his fault. My sister believes I ruined her wedding. She ruined it herself, and I don't know what to do. So options are go to the wedding as a guest, be in the wedding, or not go at all. My parents will be upset if I don't go, and I really don't want any more tension, but she disrespected me and my relationship. As soon as this wedding is over, I'm going to limit my contact with her for a while. Update 2. The first part of this is written before the wedding, and the second part will be after the wedding. First off, I want to say I didn't know this post had blown up like it did until a few days ago. When I first posted it, it only had about 30 comments, and now I've seen thousands and received lots of messages. I've also received some messages and read some comments about how I'm not responding to people or answering questions. I don't think I'm required to answer anyone. I've heard tons of crazy theories and lots of people saying they hope my sister attacks me again or I should get her arrested or scream, rape, at her wedding. While these are all interesting, this is unfortunately my real life and not a movie. I will try and clear up any questions in this post. Some people asked if race is an issue, and it's not. My family is French and Puerto Rican. My boyfriend is Italian. And my sister's fiancé is just white. I don't know what his ethnicity is. There was also some confusion about my siblings. I am one of 5 kids. My twin is a girl. I guess that got misunderstood when I said 2 girls, 2 guys. I meant that besides my sister getting married, there were 4 of us walking down the aisle. I kept saying twin instead of sister, so she wouldn't get confused with the one getting married. My sister is second oldest. Also, don't think money is an issue either. My family's not rich, just middle class. The reason her wedding is getting paid for and not mine is because she didn't go to college and I did. They paid for the majority of my tuition, and I don't want a big fancy wedding either. Some people also asked why they don't revoke their money from her for this behavior, but the wedding has already been paid for a while, so there's no getting their money back. My sister did have a black eye still at her bachelorette party and changed the venue to a darker place, and she wore lots of makeup. My twin brothers and me and my boyfriend went to the club that night instead and had a fabulous time and got trashed. I heard from her friend that she was telling everyone she got hit with a car door and not my fist. My sister has always been a bit unhinged. When she was in high school, she and my twin used to fight all the time. Every breakup my sister has ever had, she has broken down and shut down completely and felt her life is over. I've seen this since she was 12. I used to get in lots of arguments with my parents over them excusing her behavior, which ultimately made me decide to go to college across the country. During college, I rarely talked to her. When I came back home, she had matured, and our relationship has been good for a while. She still occasionally has huge meltdowns over small things like this wedding. I sent my future brother-in-law a text asking why him and his brother are so obsessed with me, to which he didn't respond. Me and my dad went down to his place, and he said my sister was the one who kept telling him that I was interested and would leave my boyfriend. So I don't even know which one of them came up with this plan. My dad got mad and told him to leave me and my boyfriend alone. So I have told my sister to go to therapy for years, and she's refused. I tried to have my mom see if she can get her to go to family therapy with me, and she also refused but said she would talk with me and my mom. When her and her fiancé first started dating, she brought him to a work New Year's party, and he brought his brother and I also attended. This was her first boyfriend that had shown any interest in getting married. One day, I guess the brother had said he found me very attractive, and my sister instantly jumped the gun on that. She told him that I was not in a serious relationship. I had been with my boyfriend for 3 years, and he had a strong chance with me and he's just my type. Wrong. So he's been under the impression that my boyfriend is just a placeholder, which is extremely not the case. He's just as delusional as my sister. This made no sense to me why she did this because my twin is single. We are fraternal, so we don't look the same and we're different heights with very different personalities, but she's still a very pretty girl and single. My sister has expressed some jealousy of my relationship over the years, so that could be a factor in her trying to break us up. She's always made comments about how she'll never have what I have with my boyfriend. About a month ago, right before her ultimatum, she found out she's pregnant. I didn't know. She thinks if she doesn't make this brother thing happen, then her fiancé will leave her, and being a single mom is more frightening for her than her family hating her. It's still early enough that she does have other options, but she's committed to this for some reason. This was an intense conversation and also talked about other things, so this was all I could get out of her before my patience ran out. I did kind of snap on her and said some things along the lines of, "Sorry you're so pathetic that you date any guy who looks at you and you still can't find a good relationship, and I can. You will be divorced before Labor Day." Yes, it was a little mean, but I was very heated in the moment and wanted to say something worse. My boyfriend is very adamant about us going to the wedding, despite all the crap my sister is putting him through. My boyfriend doesn't have close relationships with his siblings and has always loved being a part of this family. He wants me to maintain a relationship with mine so I don't regret it later. He's still hurt though that my sister has been going through these great lengths to get him out of the picture. I've tried to reassure him the best I can that everyone still loves him and I always will. We're going for the ceremony as guests and then leaving as soon as they say I do. My 2 brothers and twin sister are walking together as a trio. We took wedding pictures together at a park so our parents could have something of all of us, and we looked good. They haven't decided yet if they're staying for the whole wedding, but they're going to feel it out. My older brother is staying the whole time so he can watch the brother and have some words with him. A lot of people said to have my boyfriend propose at her wedding, but I don't care enough to deliberately try and ruin her wedding. That will not make the situation better in the slightest, and I honestly don't ever want a public proposal, and I think that's super tacky. Me and my boyfriend have just been enjoying ourselves and not worrying about any of this BS. I'm not worried about my sister attacking me again, and if she does, I can easily kick her ass. She can't fight, which is why I don't know why she even tried in the first place. Also, Some people said, isn't it incest if sisters date brothers? But it is not at all, and I have cousins who are married to sisters. Not excusing the behavior, just saying that's not incest at all. After the wedding. So the wedding, I showed up in my bridesmaid dress because I wasn't going to go and buy another one, and it's a very nice dress. Me and my boyfriend tried to go in as late as we could to limit the amount of family asking me why I'm not in the wedding. A few aunts and uncles asked, and I just said my sister lost her mind and to ask her. I tried to stay with some cousins who I told what happened and know how my sister is an occasional nut. The ones who knew that my boyfriend's invite was revoked were pissed, considering some of their plus ones were just dates. We sat in the front row where my sister, her husband, and the brother could see me with my very serious, handsome, amazing, loving boyfriend. He held my hand the whole time and made sure I was okay. This wedding just confirmed me not wanting a big wedding. We can have a party at most. It was only once that the brother was staring at me, and I quickly shut that down by kissing my boyfriend. As soon as they all walked back down the aisle, I said my goodbyes to the people that deserved it, and we left. We went to a bar and danced and had a good time. I'm glad I went to the wedding so I can say I told you so when this marriage ends in 6 months. I'm glad that delusional SOB saw me kissing the man I love because that will never be him. My twin had quite a few drinks at the wedding and was being very mouthy with my sister. I didn't ask her to say something, but she would have done that with or without booze. My younger brother told almost every family member that my sister went apes hit on me, and that's why I wasn't at the reception. My older brother did talk to the fiancé's brother, but I don't know what he said. I didn't ask many other questions, and this is just what they told me. I feel really bad for my sister, honestly. She baby-trapped herself with a super bottom feeder. That man has 0 qualities that would make me jump through all these hoops. He has the personality of an Adidas sandal. I wish my sister had more self-respect and raised her standards. I don't know much about their relationship, and if he's abusive, I would like to think that she at least has that much respect for herself to not put up with that. Maybe they're in love. Maybe he's using her. Who knows? This marriage may not last. But she's now attached to him for at least the next 18 years. While I sort of get her reasoning for not wanting to be a single mom, my brother is a single dad and doing just fine. I don't plan on talking to her for quite a while. I don't know how things turned out for them. For not getting me with the brother after prying, they still wouldn't give me clear answers, so I don't know how serious the husband actually is about his loser brother getting laid. Those brothers were either neglected or breastfed till they were teens. I was already going on vacation this summer with my boyfriend, but I might extend it now. Who knows, may even get married in France for shits and giggles. Anyway, thanks for all the support. Sorry that this ending wasn't as dramatic as you all wanted it to be. I'm not expecting an apology. I honestly don't care anymore and just want to move on with my life and be happy and not deal with any more psycho behavior. I'm just glad that I haven't received any messages from the fiancé's brother or my mom, and that I have a great man. If there's any questions I missed, feel free to let me know. A lot of your comments made me and my BF laugh. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Parents favored my older brother, giving him a car on his 18th birthday, while I received a lackluster celebration. Later, their favoritism was exposed. My brother got a car for his 18th birthday, not a new car, but a 20-year-old Lexus in pretty good shape. He rubbed it in my face for the rest of his senior year of high school. Compared to my brother, I get just as good grades, better in some cases even. I worked my hardest in the hope of fairness. I even volunteered, cleaning up garbage in my local area. Then my 18th birthday came and went a few weeks ago, and the only thing I wanted, the only thing I was hoping for was a car. I wasn't expecting something like a new car or a sporty car, just something reliable like my brother got. The party wasn't anything like my brother's 18th. For his 18th, my mom baked the cake herself. A delicious layered chocolate pudding cake. I got a sheet cake from the supermarket. For his party, they got a DJ. For mine, it was my dad's old boombox with a couple of mixed CDs. We went through the whole party, and I figured my parents might have just been waiting to spring a surprise gift on me. But that didn't happen. I asked them, as things were wrapping up, why there was no car when my brother got one. They said that they felt like he'd worked harder for it. I asked what he did that I didn't do because I did all of that and more. My grandma was nearby and heard everything. Then she asked them why as well. She ended up lecturing my parents, saying that she was very, very, very disappointed in them for showing favoritism. Then she proceeded to announce to everyone still there that my parents thought it was fine to get their firstborn son a car and a DJ, but not their second. Then she even pointed out how much harder my parents tried for my brother's 18th birthday than they had for mine. My uncle was the first to stand up and say something. Then everyone else who had not yet left chimed in. I ended up just walking away and going to my room to sit and think. I got a few "I'm sorry" calls from relatives, and my grandparents convinced me to go out with them for the evening. But when I got back, my parents were pissed and told me I'd shamed them to the whole family. I just walked past them because I didn't want to fight. The next few weeks went by with a silent treatment between us. But then, a few days ago, my parents suddenly surprised me with a white '98 Subaru Legacy that runs great. They practically threw the keys and the title in an envelope at me and said to have fun. I got the car and they're paying for insurance for the next 6 months like they did for my brother. I know a car isn't really a right but a privilege, so I feel like I've essentially blackmailed my parents into getting me one. I'd like to clarify a few things. My parents make pretty good money and also don't go out of their way to live lavishly by choice. They've always been moderate in everything they buy or do. Though, if anything is stretching their finances, it's my brother's college tuition. He got a partial scholarship, and my parents are paying the rest. I don't and never intended to ask for the same treatment on that. I want to work and pay my own student loans. Now that I have the car, I'm already looking into getting a part-time job. This also isn't a gender thing as I'm male like my brother. The bill of sale for the car I got says my parents paid $1,600 for it. My brother's car cost them about $3,000 plus, if I remember, but I don't see it as a money issue. I actually really love the Subaru and told my parents so. They did not share my enthusiasm. I also did try to talk about a car with my parents a few times last year, but they always dodged the conversations about the topic. I figured if I talked about it too much it would ruin it, and so I stopped. I would have felt like a brat to keep talking about getting an imaginary car, so I learned to just stay silent and hope. I can't go stay with my grandparents because they live in a one-bedroom condo. There isn't enough room for other people. After all their kids grew up, my grandparents decided to downsize to make their eventual retirement easier. Also, my grandparents know all of the details already, and they tell me that I didn't do anything wrong and were already planning on confronting my parents quietly over the car issue. But they took the chance to take care of the matter when they heard me asking my parents about it. As for my brother's 18th birthday party, it was held in 2020, during basically the height of the pandemic. Honestly, we shouldn't have had a big party like that at the time, but my parents insisted. As for my brother himself, he barely speaks to me, even before he left for college. He didn't show up for my 18th birthday party, and I figured that's just because he's busy with college and he's not even in the same state as us anymore. Honestly, I haven't seen or heard from him since Christmas, and even then, the most I got out of him was a mild greeting. I did thank my parents for the car enthusiastically, thank them even, but they've barely said a word to me after giving me the Subaru. When I thanked my parents, they brushed me off and just went inside. It kind of gave off the vibe that they were letting a brat play with his new toy, which was pretty upsetting and one of the reasons I made this post. There was one more thing I forgot to say. I was really hoping to get the car because I literally couldn't get a part-time job without one. We don't live in the city, and we're 10 miles from the nearest public bus stop. I've always had to get rides to go anywhere. Now that I have the Subaru, I intend to look for a part-time after-school job as soon as I can. Since it came up in so many messages, I want to clarify that when I went to talk to my parents after the party, it wasn't in front of the rest of the family. I intentionally spoke with them in another room and was supposed to be out of earshot of everyone else there. But my grandma eavesdropped and then barged in to start lecturing my parents about their actions, and that's what caused the crap storm to start. So now I can tell you all the rest of what happened before college starts. But before that, there's some things I want to get out of the way from previous commenters and messages. I literally needed a car because there was no way for me to get a job without one. I had no personal transportation and live over 10 miles from the nearest bus stop. So, for those who kept telling me to give the car back because they think I was either too spoiled and to accept life as unfair, or that I shouldn't take handouts, or I shouldn't accept gifts from crappy parents, etc. Please just stop. My inbox was so crammed full when I logged back on that it took time to go through it all. It doesn't really matter anyway, though. I did get a part-time job that later went full-time for the summer after I graduated, but 3 weeks into working part-time, the Subaru blew the head gasket while on the highway at like 45 miles per hour. The temp gauge redlined, and I had to pull over and call for help. My grandparents took a look at the car and found that someone had run a lot of gasket sealer in it, and it was still in the coolant. The car was basically band-aided back together before my parents bought it and was then barely hanging on by a thread. It drove great, and I was never pushing the car hard, as I'm kind of a slow driver. My parents claimed no prior knowledge of the problem, but their only real reaction was to shrug and say it was karma for making them get me the car in the first place. Well, that was a mistake because my grandparents were right there to witness that, and they tore into my parents like none other. My grandma told me to go wait in my room and let them sort this out. It was 2 hours before I was called back into the living room. My parents were on the couch and both looked like they'd both been metaphorically hit by a truck. My uncle and 2 other relatives were there now, too. My grandparents had gotten it out of them that when they bought the car, they just looked for the cheapest thing they could find close in the area that still ran and bought it, no questions asked. They didn't even bother to inspect the car, let alone properly read the ad for it. My uncle, who knows a thing or two about cars, told me that the engine would basically need to be rebuilt because the head gasket warped the block, and it had cost more than the car is worth to fix it. I had to call into work and tell them I was unable to make it in because my car was dead. They understood and basically put me on a sort of unpaid leave for the moment. Now I want to point out that what happens next I had no involvement with. My grandparents just told me to chill for a while and let them and my parents take care of this, and they did. A few days later, they came back with a 1999 Honda Civic hatchback with 180,000 miles on it. It was white like my Subaru was and drives great. It's not all-wheel drive like the Subaru was, but it's great on the road and gets better gas mileage. There was also a list of all recent repairs done to the car, things like a new radiator and stuff. My uncle also went over the car before giving it the okay. I thanked everyone profusely. My parents, though, at all the elation of Benzstein on Valium, said very little and just walked away. There wasn't even that vibe they had last time of acting like they were giving a new toy to a brat. If I could put it to words, the way they acted was just pure defeat. The Subaru got resold later for $400, since that was the best we could get for it with the blown head gasket, and that money was put into my savings. That's only one half of what happened, though. You see, when I said I did better in school than my brother, I wasn't kidding. My brother got a 30% scholarship after he finished high school. Well, I got a 50% one. Not at the same college, of course, but at one comparably good that was also closer to home. My parents were shocked, as an understatement, of course. They just both looked unhappy as soon as the shock wore off. I decided it wouldn't be a good idea to poke the bear by asking them about it, but my grandma thought otherwise and poked that bear, and I mean really poked it. First, she asked if my parents were happy for me, and they claimed they were, but really didn't show it in their attitudes. So my grandparents finally asked what their problem was. Why did they dislike me? Their second son was doing great and even went above expectations, and they couldn't be happy about it? Did they want me to fail? Were they hoping I'd fail? What is the deal? My mother looked really upset, and my father couldn't look me in the eyes. They both meekly said they were happy for me and managed to say they want me to take the world by storm when I go to college, and even said they'll help pay some of my tuition as well, just like they are for my brother. My grandparents both sharply said that they better keep their word because there should never have been any favoritism, period. I thanked my parents for their help. Got a light, if not limp, handshake from my father and a very stiff hug from my mother. It all felt so forced. I was, and still am, extremely thankful for the car and the tuition, but my parents just drained the room of all emotion. I ended up asking if my grandparents knew what it was that made my parents act this way. I asked if I was an accidental pregnancy or something, and they gave me the "it's time we told you" look. Well, I'm not adopted like so many asked, but I was unplanned, sort of. You see, my parents wanted both a girl and a boy, but got 2 boys instead. My brother came out as a boy, so my parents were really hoping to get a girl on the next go, and they had a prior agreement to stop after 2 kids. They never got a girl. My grandma told me they refused to find out my gender until after I was born. They were convinced I'd be born female, and they bought a lot of baby stuff for a girl. And they didn't get a girl. My grandma said I ended up using all of my brother's hand-me-downs until I was 3 years old because my parents had bought so much girl stuff in advance that they couldn't use. So I was just a disappointment to them from the time I was born. My grandparents said that they know my parents are screwed up, but they've been the way they are for so long now that there's no point in expecting them to change. Since then, my parents hadn't spoken to me much about college. In fact, they ignore the subject as much as they can. And thanks to some of the warnings I got from people who messaged me, making me paranoid, I called the college I've been accepted to and made sure to tell them that if anyone calls or emails pretending to be me or my parents call trying to say I'm not coming, then to call me for a double or even triple check if anything like that happens. I mean, I kind of doubt my parents would do that sort of thing, especially after everything that's happened, but I felt like playing it safe was the better option. Though there was something that I really didn't expect to happen, and that was my brother calling me. He called me out of the blue to talk. He said our grandparents called and told him everything. He told me he was sorry for what happened, in his own way, and he hopes that once I'm on my own I won't need to ever come back. He actually admitted to me that when he finishes college he's going to stay in the state he's in because he likes it there. Our parents, I do know, actually really want him to come back when he gets his degree, but it looks like that's not happening. I said I don't blame him and I may do the same. The rest of the conversation was a bit awkward because we aren't really used to speaking to each other much anymore. My grandparents and the rest of the family held a surprise party for me over the weekend, and they made it almost like a repeat of my brother's 18th birthday. There was a DJ and a big chocolate cake my grandma made. I couldn't thank them all enough. My parents attended the party, but they were like wallflowers the entire time. They didn't say or do much, just stayed sitting at a far table in the corner and drank beer quietly. The look of defeat they had was even greater now. I think the party wasn't just to congratulate me, but to also rub in my parents' faces that they should have done better, because the rest of the family have made their disappointment in them clear. They seemed like they wanted to leave the party for a while. Can't say I blame them. They were being humiliated into staying where they were. My grandma said that you're never too old to be taught a lesson in humility. As for my personal life, my part-time job went to full-time after high school, and I've been working hard to build my savings before I leave for college. I made minimum wage, but a job is a job, and I want to leave it with my best effort put in before my 2 weeks' notice are up. I doubt I'm going to be coming back here to make another update, and after my first post, I'm just so tired of all the negative comments. I've been away for 2 years, and I kind of expected I'd be back to post one last time in 2024 because my brother went for a 4-year bachelor's degree, much like I currently am. For those who remember my previous posts, I'm the guy whose parents basically got their butts verbally handed to them by the family for bad favoritism towards my older brother. Crap really hit the fan on my 18th birthday because my parents barely put any effort into it and went all out on my brother's 18th in 2020 during the pandemic. They even managed to get a DJ for the party, and then they presented him with a car. Well, on my 18th, I got no car or even anything close to a similar party, even though my academic standing was better than my brother's. I basically worked too hard for my parents' approval and never got it. When I asked them why my brother got a car and not me, they claimed my brother worked harder for it, which was later confirmed to be not true when I got a bigger scholarship. My grandma happened to be eavesdropping and laid into my parents. Then she got the rest of the family involved, and for the record, they were planning on getting involved anyway. My grandma just stepped things up right then. But after several family members laid into them, my parents, just to try and save face, bought me a car, but treated me like a brat who was getting a new toy when they gave me the keys. It was a late 90s Subaru that I thought was great, but turned out to have a blown head gasket that had barely been holding together with sealer. My parents treated me like I was a brat for wanting equal treatment, and then when the car went bad, their reaction was to apathetically shrug and call it karma, which caused my grandparents to start it all over again with them and caused a family intervention. I got many people messaging me and asking if having a car was really necessary and that I basically forced my parents into it. I forced nothing, and it would have happened anyway if I didn't ask my parents why. And I really did need the car. I had no way of having a job without one. My parents lived 10 miles from the nearest bus stop. I literally had no way of making money before college without a car. And no, I couldn't get rides. No one was available for that on a daily basis. So many people I talked to here tried to dance around my reasoning to insert their own logic, many of which I felt like were projecting their own problems onto me. And then there were the straight-up trolls and jerks. I don't even want to repeat, let alone remember what they all said to me, but a lot of them kept it up after I got the NTA verdict like they had an axe to grind, and it really didn't help my mental state at the time, as you can imagine. My family laid into my parents all over again in that family intervention, and by the time they were done, they looked like scolded kids sitting there looking at their feet. The Subaru was sold as junk, and my grandparents essentially forced my parents to buy me a better car, a Honda Civic, and my uncle went over the car with a fine-toothed comb before they bought it. And that time my parents didn't even treat me like a brat. And yes, I still have the Honda, and yes, it still runs just fine. I've kept up with oil changes and the like. No accidents either. I've been a careful driver. The final thing that broke my parents before I left was finding out that I got a better scholarship than my brother. Any excuses they'd previously had to favor my brother so completely were thrown out the window and were forced to give me words of encouragement I knew they didn't mean. And in wondering why they disliked me so much, I later found out from my grandma why I was treated differently. It was because my parents had wanted their second child to be a girl. My grandma ended up admitting even more to me later after I left for college. Before I was born, my parents were so convinced that I'd be a girl that they bought a bunch of girl stuff without even checking my gender through ultrasound. Well, I found out from my grandma about a year ago that my mother had tried to raise me like a girl for like the first 6 months of my life. She was putting me in girls' clothes and calling me by a different name. My father enabled it all. I know it's true because my grandma showed me old family photos of me with my brother when I was an infant, and I was wearing pink in all of them. There was even a visible name tag on some of them, the name my parents wanted for a girl. But once word got out, my parents stopped dressing me as a girl. My grandparents told my mother that trying to raise me as something I wasn't even giving me a choice on whether or not I wanted to be that. And though my family is rather old school, my grandparents are surprisingly open-minded people, and they put the hammer down on my parents, so the girl treatment stopped. But instead of new clothes, they gave me my brother's hand-me-downs for years until my grandparents noticed that too and did something about it. Finding out all of this, my grandparents kept my childhood from being far worse than it was, and they never told me until this past couple of years. I am incredibly thankful for them. My mother apparently struggled to call me by my real name for 2 years or so, and because my parents didn't get a girl, they refused to connect with me like they did my brother, the boy they'd actually wanted. And when my grandparents heard I wasn't getting anything new like my brother was, they threatened them to petition for guardianship of me, and they had evidence of the various things I described, too. My parents couldn't stand for anything that could become a public scandal, so they stopped with the hand-me-downs and pretended to love me for a while, but as I got older, it degenerated into indifference and then maybe into hate. I'm not sure. Hate means to still care in some way, but indifference is the actual opposite of love. I just know my parents couldn't accept that their favorite son wasn't the best at everything compared to their unwanted son. And since I moved out, they've barely interacted with family. They threw themselves into work, in part because the rest of the family forced them to contribute to my college like they did my brother's, but also because, to them, working was the only thing that gave them a reason to tell everyone to leave them alone. My grandma suspects they've even slept in their cars a few times to avoid coming home. I only saw my parents at Christmas at my uncle's house for the past couple of years, and they barely even spoke to me. Now that I was living my best life away from them, I guess you could say that they stopped bothering to act like I was their son. They don't want me anymore. After the family humiliation they feel like they suffered, even though they know they brought it on themselves, and they became workaholics that do little else. My grandmother told me my bedroom is basically exactly how I left it on the day I moved out. My parents haven't even gone inside, but they kept my brother's room clean and ready for the day he'd finally come back home after college. Well, that didn't happen. They flew out to see him for his graduation and had a big celebration with him. I was not invited to go as well. Not that I could afford it, but my grandparents went along and they gave me the details. My parents were still convinced my brother would be coming back home, and that's when he awkwardly told them he had already secured a job through an internship he'd done the past year, and he'd found an apartment of his own, too. My father became furious, and my mother lost her mind crying and begging him to come home, but he refused. You see, this past 2 years my brother and I have reconnected a bit. He found my Reddit account and called me. He wasn't angry, just wanted to talk. He admitted to me that our parents put him through a lot as well. Our mother absolutely smothered him, especially when I wasn't around, and our father was also quite strict with his expectations. So the fact that I did better than my brother when our parents had invested everything into him just broke them, and now they're extra broken because my brother refused to come home. The way our parents treated my brother is also the reason we stopped connecting as siblings until this past couple of years. He did bully me at times when we were growing up, but that's because being the favorite went to his head, but it was favoritism with strings attached, and when he realized that, he got counseling after moving out. My brother also has a girlfriend he met while in college, and he kept her a secret because he knew our parents wouldn't approve, and they didn't when they found out. Bro blew up at them when my mother referred to his girlfriend, that she hadn't even met, as an H word. Bro's girlfriend is in nursing school and a year from graduation herself, and my brother says she's the best. I've never met her, but she sounds wonderful by how he's described her. My grandma told me my mother went so far as to hire a private investigator to find out who my brother's girlfriend was and was irritated to know that she was squeaky clean and from a good family, on the same side politically, too. But in her mind, she was the reason my brother wasn't coming back. Even though bro made it clear he decided that before even meeting his girlfriend. My father had basically become stoically silent about it, from what I heard, but my mother let it slip to my brother that she'd hired a detective, and my brother gave our parents a piece of his mind. This led to a whole argument about how they gave him everything and he was ungrateful for not coming back, but he called them out that being the favored child is abuse too because they nearly made him like them. It broke my parents to hear that. My brother told our grandparents and they staged another family intervention, one I was even involved in through video call. My parents tried to not even pay attention to me, but even bro told them to talk to me. We all told them enough was enough. They have 2 sons, and they needed to start treating us fairly because they let something as idiotic as not being born the gender they wanted to ruin their love for me from day one. And pardon my language on this next part. My father hit his breaking point and yelled, "You want us to admit we messed up? Well, yeah, we did. What do you want us to do, Fing time travel? We're paying for part of brother's Fing college, too. What more does he want from us?" Things ended very poorly in that intervention. My mother cried that she was sorry to me, but even then, I still didn't feel her heart was in it because she didn't spend much time apologizing to me at all before moving on to my brother through the phone he was video calling from, and she spent a long time crying and apologizing to him until he told her to go back and actually apologize to me like she meant it. That's when my father grabbed the phone and shut it off. Then he just sat down and told everyone to leave. The last thing my grandparents said to my parents was that they were so disappointed in them, and maybe losing both sons showed them they should never have favored one. Right now, my parents are not on speaking terms with the rest of the family. My grandma heard a rumor they may be planning to move, but they have a paid-off country house and great careers. I feel like they'd be fools to move, but since my brother isn't going back and I'm likely not either, I suppose it's not really an issue. I kind of doubt they'd welcome me if I came to visit after the crap that went down. I am still thankful to them for helping to pay for my college. My student loans were significantly reduced thanks to them, but as parents, I think we can all agree they just didn't do a good job. Now on to the next story. Story 4. How do I, 24M, get my dad, 52M, to release his wife, 38F, not my mom, and to quit pressing a relationship. My mom passed when I was 14. I was always closer with her than my dad, so I took it very hard and still miss her every day. My dad moved on extremely quickly, I'm talking about 1.5 months later, and he was openly dating his current wife. I suspect he was cheating on my mom. She moved in 4 months after my mom's death. Then 9 months after her death, they announced their engagement on my birthday as one of my gifts. I obviously didn't take it well. Made a scene, dumped the cake they got me, and walked out. I disappeared for a few days until they were about to put out a missing person/runaway report. I was forced to go back. They tried to get rid of all evidence of my mom. Pictures, personal effects, memories, and others. I kept what I could and hid some others. They wouldn't let me celebrate her birthday or anything to do with my mom. They tried to force me to call her Dad's wife, Mom. I never did. They would ignore me when I called her by her name. She would introduce herself as my mom. I would correct her every time. It got to the point that I stopped talking to her unless absolutely necessary or if I was correcting her. These talks were usually one-word answers. My dad got angry every time I didn't call her mom, use her first name, or introduce her as Dad's wife. I once spent 2 weeks not talking to either of them when I was 16 because I was ruining their family dynamic. Until I can be a part of the family, there was nothing to say or do. As one, they caved at about the 15th day of no communication/interaction. I turned 18 and left for uni and went extremely low contact and didn't go back. When I was 21, I got engaged to my fiancée. She knows about my relationship with my dad and his wife. She respects it and is on my side. When they found out, my dad and his wife had a fit. They didn't know I was seeing anyone. My dad's wife posted on social media saying she was excited that her son, me, was getting married, with a bunch of other things saying she can't wait until she becomes a grandma. I made a short post saying I am not and never was her son, and she won't be a grandma to any future kids. My dad got mad, saying I was disrespecting my mother and embarrassed her. I asked who we were talking about because my only mother was my real/only bio/gave me life mom. And at this point, I had lost both of my parents on that day when I was 14. That was 3 years ago, and we went back to low/no contact. But my wife is about 8 months pregnant. They showed up to my house. I never gave them my address. They wanted to talk and meet my wife. I didn't let them in and said to turn around and go back to where they came from. But apparently, they decided they wanted to move to my city/state to be closer and repair the relationship between us. She said she missed her son and wanted to be a better mom and grandma. I called them delusional and told them to leave and slammed the door. They bought a house about 5 minutes away from us. This has all been way too much for me, and my therapist wants me to let them in, but I would rather cut all contact. It wouldn't be so bad if they just would stop trying to replace my mom and act like she never existed. I honestly don't know much about my dad's wife. I don't even know if I know who my dad is anymore. My wife is struggling to support me emotionally and doesn't know how to help. Please, internet strangers, how do I convince them? Dad and Dad's wife. She is not and will never be my mom. ETA about my therapist. He said I should try to express my true feelings towards them in a non-hostile and non-threatening manner. Do it in a way that is constructive but gets to the point. Learn more about my dad and his wife and get to the root of who they are and how they feel about the situation. But I'm going to find a better therapist. Long update. Hello all. Thanks for your comments and feedback. I did read them all. I couldn't reply for some reason. Also, for those who said I must be fake because of a lack of replying/updates, the post got so much attention that it was locked in 24 hours. I do have a life with work and an 8-month pregnant queen that I have the privilege of calling my wife. That took priority. To answer some questions and to clarify. My wife, me, and our unborn child are doing good overall. My wife is over being pregnant at this point. Our child should be here in the coming weeks. I did find a new therapist. I called to cancel the rest of my appointments on the books, and he did not take that well, so I put in a complaint. I met with my new one, and I like her a lot better. I feel like I'm actually being heard and actually getting the help I needed. I want to make this clear. I am 24. My dad's wife is 38 to 14 years older than me. My dad is 52 to 14 years older than his wife. So when she entered my life, I was 14, and she was 28. There were also theories about how my dad might have had something to do with my mom's death. That is not the case, but I still believe they were together before she passed. I am investing in a security system, but it will be a few weeks until they can install it. But for now, we have a doorbell cam and some cheaper cameras. Social media. Since the post about her being excited about being a grandma and how my wife and I got engaged, we have locked down all social media. My wife and I are not active on any platforms anymore except for messaging or sharing pictures. We found the leak as well. It is my dad's wife's sister's husband. We had a family dinner where we had planned on working on the birthing plan. My dad's wife was insistent on being there, which was odd as she was not a part of it to begin with. While we were waiting for my mill to get home, I shared what happened between my dad and how it made me/my wife feel. My dad's wife got visibly uncomfortable when I called him out on it. He denied it, but it was obvious. So I called him out and he broke down. He said he had been talking with them because we need all the family support we can get and they should know their grandchild. This caused an argument. It ended with my dad's wife moving out and staying with us. They have no kids and had some issues. I think it is over for them. I will never trust him. Our birthing plan has been locked down and secured, made a day later without my dad's wife, but we have some just-in-case of crazy showing up plans. Everyone who needs to know the plan/details knows now. It is surprisingly hard to get a protection order where I live. It is heavily dependent on violence or physical contact. Technically, what they have done is not against the law yet. They are perceived as no real danger at this time since there were no threats made and they left when asked. They have free will to move wherever they want. Also, since a family member gave another family member my address, it is fair game in regards to grandparents' rights. It is only when my wife and I have lost custody or are unable to care for them, but my in-laws will be taking on that role if needed. My wife and I are not in a position to move. We just bought our house when interest rates were low, and my in-laws helped with the down payment. It is nothing massive, but it is home and perfect for our starter family. My dad and his wife are unable/shouldn't have kids. I don't know from what side made it impossible, so that may be why the constant pressure. I did write my dad a letter summing up why I want no contact, how I feel about what they did, how his wife is not my mom and will never be. If I feel like giving them a chance, it is on my family's terms. I specified that my family is me, my wife, and any possible children moving forward. They are not to talk to my wife or me at any time unless it is through our lawyer. He can decide what information to pass on. They are not welcome around us at any point, including our house, school, daycare, social gatherings, birthdays, Christmas, BBQs, etc., as well as in public. We are strangers. Keep space and act like we don't exist. If they break this, they will get a follow-up letter up to and including a protection order. The letter was quite long. Our lawyer looked it over and my wife and I signed it, then he signed it as well as it being notarized, and then we made legal copies for all of our records. My lawyer went with a private delivery service and hand-delivered it to him with a signature of received goods plus video evidence. So far, so good on that end. I'm now focused on my wife and soon-to-be child. I hope I'm ready. I know how not to be a father, so there is that. Thanks, all, for your input. Is there anything else I should do or think of to protect my family? Now on to the next story. Story 5. Wife got a breast reduction without telling me, and now I'm struggling with her flat chest and scars. This has caused a rift between us and may lead to divorce. I, 30, male, and my wife, 29, female, have been together for 6 years, married for 2. I have a type, and based on my past relationships and the women I'm attracted to, it's not subtle. I like curvy women, and my wife happened to fit this type perfectly. She was thick and I appreciated that. I've been with other types of women and simply put, thinner women don't do it for me. I mention this because I think that attraction is a big part of a relationship. I could love a person's personality all day long, but if I'm not attracted to them, it's not going to work. Very early in our relationship, she told me that she wanted a reduction as she felt like her breasts didn't fit her frame and that they caused her to receive unwanted attention. I asked her if they caused her pain. She said that they didn't. I told her that I could understand doing something so drastic if they caused her pain or discomfort, or if it needed to be done for medical reasons, but doing it just for aesthetics seemed a bit much. She didn't really agree or disagree and more or less just dropped the subject, as did I. Fast forward 5 years, and we have been married for a year. Out of nowhere, she said that she had an appointment with a doctor to talk about a reduction. I was kind of surprised because I figured that, at the very least, she would mention it to me. I understand that it's not my place to tell her what she can or can't do with her body, but I thought she would have said something, even in passing. After her appointment, I thought that we should, at the very least, sit down and talk about her undergoing such massive surgery. I asked her about her appointment, but she seemed coy about the details. Eventually, she opened up and told me that she was keeping this close to her chest. No pun intended, because she knew that I would try and talk her out of it. I told her that I'm her husband and that I wouldn't try and talk her out of it, but I did want to make clear that, for lack of a better phrase, actions have consequences. She said that she understood that, but her chest made her feel too self-conscious and she wanted to go through with it. I told her that I understood and would stand by her. So she got the procedure done, and after all the healing and swelling went down, she was left with a small B cup. We have been intimate a few times over the few weeks after she felt like everything was good, and it's been a struggle. The size is really messing with me, but not only that, the scars are brutal. I have a thing about scars that just give me the ick, even when I had my own surgery. My own scars gave me the chills in the worst way possible. I opted for doggy style and reverse cowgirl so I didn't have to see the scars. But my wife knew something was off. She would switch positions so we could face each other, and it's been the end every time. I made up some shit about lower back pain and doggy style being the most comfortable position for me. She got upset and accused me of not finding her attractive. I didn't want to keep lying to her, but at the same time, if I agreed, I think it would have crushed her, so I just walked away from the conversation. I know it's not a great move if I want a healthy relationship, but I didn't know what else to do. After that, I pulled back from initiating because I'm just not into it anymore. I would accept her advances as her libido is lower than mine, but I've pulled away from that as well because her chest is really unappealing to me. After a few weeks of me not initiating, she confronted me about it. I tried to brush it off by saying that I was stressed and tired. Lying felt kinder than saying that her flat chest makes her look like a child and the scars make me want to dry heave, but she wasn't having it. I sat her down and reminded her that her actions would have consequences. She blew up at me, calling me shallow and telling me that this wouldn't matter to a real man. She asked if I still loved her. I said that I did, but that doesn't mean that I was obligated to sleep with her, and if the roles were reversed, she would say that this dynamic is borderline abusive. That conversation was like a month ago, and since then, things have been icy at best. I will want to cuddle with her and spend time with her, but she has rejected my offers to spend time with her at every turn. It feels shitty because this entire situation was caused by her. She made the decision to get this done despite my concerns. She knew how much scars deeply affected me, and she pushed a specific kind of sex onto me despite me trying to work around this. And now that the consequences of her actions are affecting her, she is mad at me. I am going out of my way to offer her physical intimacy outside of sex to show that I still love her and that I'm still there for her, but she's not having any of it. I know that she's hurt because, while I won't admit to it, she knows that I'm not attracted to her, at least with her shirt off, anymore, and that probably feels crushing, but she brought this upon herself. At this point, I don't know where else to go from here. I feel like she won't forgive me, and to be honest, this whole thing has caused some resentment towards her. So I feel that divorce is our only option at this point. So, if I get a divorce over this, edit. Those of you saying that I only loved my wife for her boobs, read the 4th paragraph, and then read it again until it makes sense to you. Sound the words out if you have to. Not only is that take reductive as hell, but it's also flat out incorrect. Is the size an issue for me? Yes. But it's not the end-all be-all. I know that attraction is very much learned, but I'd like to do that at my pace, and constantly putting fresh scars in my face when we are intimate is not how you go about that. My issue was twofold. She allowed the glances of strangers to supersede my comfort with the situation. She put herself into debt just to appease the thoughts and opinions of other people. She is not letting me adjust at my own pace. I love my wife and I love being with my wife, but forcing me to look at something that I find deeply disturbing is kind of effed up. I've offered solutions that could work for us perfectly, but it seems that unless the only words out of my mouth are great decision, honey, your new boobs are way better than your old ones, she doesn't want to hear it. Because of those two factors, this is hard for me to look past, especially since this wasn't an unnecessary thing to do. I haven't even gotten into the fact that insurance refused to cover the surgery because it was technically a cosmetic surgery, and she put herself in debt to do this, which pushes us back from buying the house we want. All around, this was selfish and pointless, literally hustling backward. What part of this post said that I was only interested in her boobs? Have an adult read the post for you. I, 30 male, started a dead-end relationship with my 29 female wife. Essentially, she made a unilateral decision to get a breast reduction for cosmetic reasons. I tried to get used to it, but my issues are multifaceted. 1. After all the swelling went down, she's left with a B cup. She's flat-chested, and it feels very gross to me, like I'm looking at a child. It messes with me mentally, as I am used to seeing large breasts when we used to have sex, so seeing her so flat just makes it feel inappropriate. 2. Her scars are terrible. I have a strong aversion to scarring and scars in general. Hers are absolutely brutal, red, and raised all the time. I even thought that she had an infection, but she tells me that her scars are red for a long time. 3. I'm simply not into flat-chested women. It's just not for me. 4. I'm angry that she would make such a bold decision with basically no heads up or room for feedback. 5. With how they look, between the flatness and the scarring. Not only does it do nothing for me, but they actively turn me off when I see them. I used to put her in positions like doggy style and reverse cowgirl where I could at least focus on other things, but it's like she puts them in my face on purpose. She even confirmed that theory when she told me that she wanted to face me while we have sex so she can make sure I'm still attracted to her. And to be frank, I've lost a lot of attraction towards her. I told her the truth. I said that her chest is turning me off, and that I would like to work around it for the time being until I can grow some attraction towards them. But she freaked out on me. I suggested she wear a shirt, or if we can have her face away from me, and she said that's degrading. Fair. I asked if she can wear lace bras or lingerie so it's sexy for both of us. But she says that it feels like I'm just trying to cover her up. To be fair to her, I am, but it's what I'm comfortable with. She boxes at every suggestion or cries and tells me that it feels like I don't love her. I asked her what a good solution for this would be, and her solution is that I should appreciate how she looks and just get used to it. Well, I have a third option. I can just take sex off the table. It's been a few weeks since we last had sex. We average 3 to 4 times a week, so obviously she has been pissed. She asked me when I'll get over it, and I'll just ask her if she is willing to use any of my suggestions. She stormed away. Imagine trading your sex life just to get a worse pair of tits. It's a shit show. We'll probably get divorced. Update 1. I want to start off by saying, those of you who commented some version of, did you only marry her for her boobs? Or go to hell, actually get a course on phonics, then go to hell. If that's all you got from the post, then I can only hope you don't have kids to pass your low IQs down to. I have done some soul searching and have evaluated my true feelings on the matter after speaking with a few people that I trust and my therapist. I am realizing that my issue wasn't just with the reduction. Does it suck? Sure. But I'll live. I sat down with my therapist and understand that I have 4 main issues with her decision to get the procedure. My wife allowed outside influences to affect our marriage in an irreversible way. The constant pushing of my boundaries during sex. The lack of communication beforehand. The lack of communication after I rejected her advances. I gave it a week and have come to the conclusion that I can't let these feelings go. If I can't trust that she won't change her body because a creepy dude gives her a look, then how am I supposed to trust her with bigger things like having kids or buying a house? I asked if she felt happier after the procedure, and she said that she doesn't. I asked if she felt like she was stared at less. She said that she feels like she gets the same amount of looks. I asked if she felt like she got her money's worth. I didn't get an answer for that one. So the whole thing has been a failure, in essence. This was a big waste of time, money, effort, and stress. My friend put me in contact with his lawyer, so done is done, I suppose. She can keep everything. I just want the cat. Finally. For those of you that told me to leave her, so she can find someone who actually loves her, you got it. I'm done with her. Oop. I don't have an issue with B cups per SE. I have an issue with my wife lying to me and keeping secrets for months just to spend a bunch of money on a surgery that didn't fix her issue. She displayed a glaring lack of decision-making skills and has proven herself to be a liar and someone who will keep secrets from me. I know you're going to attempt to justify it, but that's a deal-breaker for me. The scars are just the cherry on top. Update 2. Well, guess who found the post? My soon-to-be ex-wife came home today, came into my office and just stared at me. Caught me off guard. After weeks of silence, she told me that she wanted to read a Reddit story to me. Alarm bells started going off, but this is something we did often throughout our relationship. So I didn't sweat it until she started reading my own words to me. It was bold. I didn't expect her to do that. After she read the post, I confirmed it was my post. She started sobbing. I guess divorce never crossed her mind, which is actually surprising to me. She cried and she pleaded. She asked what she could do to stop me from divorcing her. I told her literally the only thing she could do was go back in time and stop herself from getting the reduction. She got mad and pleaded with me to give her a way forward. I sat there for about 10 minutes trying to actually figure out if there was a way I could overlook what she did. She actually suggested getting implants. I was floored. I somehow respected her even less than before. Not only was she willing to throw away our marriage over a terrible decision, but the fact that she was actually willing to get implants tells me that she didn't even have the conviction to stand by her decision. It felt spineless. I told her that the last thing I wanted was for her to throw away her morals and convictions just to appease me. I told her that I wanted her to actually admit to me that she regretted her decision and was only trying to get me to validate her decision so she felt it was worthwhile. She kind of stopped talking and started pacing the room. She broke down and told me that she felt like she had made a mistake in some way. I felt relieved, like I wasn't crazy for feeling that way. Another part of me felt sick because this whole series of events didn't even need to happen. I asked if she felt that her life had improved since the surgery. She told me it hadn't. I asked her if I was the source of that. She told me that I wasn't. I had asked her if she knew why I was mad at her, and thanks to the lovely input of you guys, she was under the impression that I said that I was mad because she made her boobs smaller. I told her that my issue is the fact that she lied and kept secrets from me for months. I told her that the whole reason why I gave up some of my more expensive hobbies was so that I could save up for a new house that she wanted to get so that we could both have our names on it. I told her that I was upset because she constantly pushed my boundaries and refused to find a solution with me that could work for both of us. I told her that I was upset because she has shown a severe lack of good decision-making skills. I told her that I couldn't trust her to make good decisions, and that cripples our relationship. She asked if we could try couples counseling, but I'm not sure that will fix how I feel. I understand she made a life-altering unilateral decision without my input, and I can't trust her to come to me with another issue. Like, if we had a child, how do I know that she will come to me and tell me news I don't want to hear? How do I know she won't just hide it from me until it blows up in our faces? She didn't have a response to that. After a few minutes of just waiting for her to say something, she asked if I would have had a problem with her getting the procedure if she came and talked to me about it. I told her that I still think her reasoning for getting the surgery was pointless, but it's her body. I admitted that I probably would have just suggested therapy because I don't think her issue would ever be solved with a reduction. Back pain? Sure, that makes sense. Cancer? Of course, we do what we have to do. But to stop people from glancing at her? That's not it. I asked if it occurred to her that maybe people might glance at her because she's beautiful. She didn't have an answer for me. I asked if she had self-esteem issues or body image issues like so many of you said. She told me that she didn't. She just found it annoying when people looked at her chest. I asked if that made her self-conscious or if that caused her anxiety. She told me that it didn't, and that she never felt unsafe or anything. She just wanted to have a more slender body type because that was the body type she always wanted. Turns out she never really liked being thick. I told her that, to my ear, it sounds like she had body image issues. She was kind of wishy-washy about it, so I suggested therapy. We talked for the majority of the afternoon. She asked if I was still going to divorce her. At that moment, I wanted to die. It felt like a hole opened up in my stomach. Up to this point, I had the conviction that I would divorce her. I guess seeing her as such a sad person made my armor crack a bit. I told her that today was emotional and that I shouldn't make any decisions at the moment. She asked if we could sleep together for the night, but I wasn't in the headspace for it, and I told her so. She looked like she was about to throw a fit, but I guess she thought better of it. I told her that she didn't have to move out immediately, but she should start looking for a new place or ask her mom if she could live with her. She doesn't have a job at the moment because she lost it during all this. She asked about the car, and to be honest, I don't need it and I have savings, so I told her that she can drive it for now. If I follow through with a divorce, I plan on just giving her the car as long as she just signs the paperwork. So, for now, she'll be staying in the in-law suite, regardless of whether we stay together or not. I still think I'm due for a vacation. I hate to sound like this, but I can only conclude they are mad at very reasonable points because I'm a man who is talking about his wife's body. The wife's perspective, she wrote a post too. I, 29, female, ruined my marriage with my husband, 30, male. How do I fix this? 5 days later, I don't even know where to begin. I, 29 female, have always been on the thicker side, even from a young age. I was always filled out. I always liked the lean, slender look, but my genetics had other ideas. I always had big boobs. I've been hot and cold toward them at different points in my life. I got to the point where I had a G-cup. I thought about a breast reduction but never did any real research. I've also been on the receiving end of a lot of staring. It feels like I couldn't just go outside my house without some guy trying to hit on me. 6 years ago, I met my husband, 30, male. I'm gonna call him HH, and I met through friends, and we immediately hit it off. He was tall, handsome, and funny as hell, but he was really sweet and caring. Early in our relationship, I was way less secure with my body and wanted to make sure that he liked how I looked. I asked H about his thoughts on if I should get a breast reduction. He told me that they couldn't make them any more perfect if they tried. I laughed but asked for a serious answer. He said that he would need to understand why I wanted one. I told him that it's not like they hurt me or anything. I was fortunate. He told me that I was beautiful and that he loved my body as much as he loved me, but if I didn't love my body as much as him, then he would suggest therapy. I was happy that he found me to be attractive. I took my small victory and moved on. H and I dated for 3 years before he popped the question on my favorite hiking trail. It was perfect. We got married in winter 2021. About a year ago. I guess I had a small bout of depression. To H's credit, he was on it. He knew something was wrong, but I didn't really even know myself, so I just told him that nothing was wrong. He would take time to listen to me talk. He would take me out on dates and just make sure he knew that he cared about me. I appreciated that from him. I would reassure him that nothing was wrong, but I think he knew. One day, I was looking at the wedding photos, and I just hated how I looked. At that moment, I looked at my chest and felt like I looked very over-sexualized and trashy. I cried. All the thoughts of having that lean, slender look came back, and I started researching breast reduction. I found a doctor that wasn't too far from my job. I called and made an appointment. The consult went well. I made a follow-up appointment going over some more details. We decided that I was a good candidate for surgery, and I went home. Eventually, I got the call and scheduled it for a few weeks later. During the weeks leading up to the date, I got a call that my insurance wouldn't cover the procedure. This gave me pause, but I knew that I had savings that could cover the cost. Unfortunately, this was supposed to be used for a new house for H and myself since we lived in his house. I felt bad because throughout this entire process I didn't tell H about any of this. I knew he would tell me that I was beautiful and that I shouldn't spend the money on this, but to be honest, I didn't want to hear any of that. He has a habit of trying to fix everything. I had my mind made up that I was going to get the reduction and I would be happier for it, but I didn't tell him for so long that I felt like I couldn't say anything at this point. 1 week out from the surgery, I was sitting in bed one day, and he hops in bed and tells me that he would like to go over the meal plan for the next week. Something we do every week. I froze because I knew that next week was going to look very different than usual. I told him that I had to tell him something. I told him that I was getting a breast reduction. He stopped for a split second and just laughed. I told him that I wasn't joking and that I was serious. He started asking me questions, and after 5 minutes or so, he realized that I was being serious. He looked shocked. He asked why I kept this from him for so long. I told him that I didn't want him to tell me that I was perfect and beautiful. I felt ugly and told him that it felt invalidating when he contradicted that. He told me that he tells me that because he loves me and he doesn't want me to feel bad about myself. He asked how long I knew and I told him the truth. I told him that I knew for 4 months that I was getting the surgery. He just sat there looking at me. When I asked him what he was thinking, he said that he didn't know what to say. He just got up, gave me a hug, and told me that he loved me, but we needed to have a long talk after I healed up. The next week was a blur between the surgery, drugs, and the pain meds. The first few days were very bad pain-wise, but after that, I mostly just felt drained. I would look at my chest, and I only felt nervous. I had this fear that deep down I wouldn't like how I looked and would hate my chest. H was a rock during this. He always made sure to tell me that I was beautiful and that he loved me. He also made sure I ate. He took care of the cooking and cleaning. He made sure I took my meds on time. He even changed his work schedule so that he would be at home when I was awake and paid his brother to stay at the house during the night in case I needed anything. But the big one was that he changed my dressings and cleaned me. H has a thing with scars. He absolutely has no stomach for them. He will even turn his head away whenever I watch those medical shows on TV. A few years ago, he had a knee surgery, nothing major, but he needed stitches. He couldn't stand to look at them. I knew that he had an issue with scars and stitches, but I thought that he would be fine. Until we had sex for the first time. We usually have a good mix of positions during sex, but it seemed like he would only put me in doggy style or reverse cowgirl. I knew we were in trouble the first time I turned around, and I could feel him go soft, like as soon as he saw my chest he was out. He claimed that he came, but I didn't think that was the case. I also noticed that he didn't initiate after the surgery, something that he did regularly. I felt like he didn't want to look at me, but I was determined to make him rip the Band-Aid off. He would ask for other positions, but I felt like he was telling me to turn away from him. I felt ugly. The worst part was that he wouldn't just tell me that he didn't like my chest. I couldn't fix anything because he wouldn't even tell me what the issue was. Once I initiated, and he asked if I could wear a shirt, I felt like he was trying to cover me up. The next day we sat and talked. He asked if I would be okay with wearing a corset or a sexy bra. I asked him if he liked my chest. I kind of danced around the question, which is extremely unlike him. He said that he just couldn't look at my scars. I told him that he needed to get over it. He said that he didn't and that he had no obligation to have sex with me. I was so hurt at that moment that I told him that a real husband wouldn't have an issue with a few scars. He just looked at me, and he looked hurt. I knew that would hurt him, and I said it anyway. I think that was the start of the end for us. A week or so goes by, and we are back to just awkward. I started to initiate, and he turns off the light and started reciprocating. In that moment, I knew that this was weird. He is extremely visual, opting for lights on or blinds open. I knew he was making the room dark, and in that moment I just started crying. He asked what was wrong, and I told him that I knew that he thought that I was ugly. He sat up and we argued. He said that he was trying for me, but nothing was good enough. I told him that I was sensitive and that him asking me to put a shirt on and turning off the lights made me second guess if I was pretty or not. He got mad the first time in all this. He said that I made the conscious decision to get this done without his input, so I shouldn't need his validation. I just got up and left the room. I didn't want to talk to him and just wanted to curl up and cry. In the morning, we sat down and he told me that he has boundaries, and the only way for this to work is for me to respect his boundaries. I told him that if I did so, I would be allowing him to make me feel ugly. He said that he needed time, which is not good because I feel like if he loved me, he wouldn't need to adjust to me. I said that wouldn't work for me, so he said that he was taking sex off the table until we could come to a compromise. I thought he wasn't serious until I tried that night, and he just got out of the bed. I asked why he was doing this, and he said that actions have consequences. After that night, I didn't want to talk to him. He would try and talk to me, but I wasn't even in the headspace to speak to him. Unfortunately, I felt like I couldn't go to work because I wasn't in the headspace to go. I ran out of PTO, and my boss told me that I couldn't retroactively apply for FMLA. He told me that I needed to report the next day or I was terminated. I told him that I wouldn't be there, and he fired me. During the last week, I have cried so much. This didn't turn out how it was supposed to at all. I thought I was going to be happy, but in all honesty, I've never felt worse. I feel like I took a part of myself that was pretty and got rid of it because I thought it would make me happy. I never had one of those moments I see the TikTok girls have where they try on a shirt before and after their surgery, and they are so happy. Now my shirts still look bad, and on top of that I don't have a chest. I just look at my chest and cry. I see the scars and think about how small I am now. I was staying in the guest bedroom when one of my girlfriends sent me a link to a Reddit post. Instantly, I knew it was H. He even brought up divorce. I didn't realize things were so rocky that he was thinking of divorce. I didn't know what to do. I still don't know what to do. I went upstairs and started reading the post. H was staring through me at this point. Then he told me that it was his post. I just cried so hard. He didn't even hug me or anything. He just sat in his chair and looked at the floor. I read through the comments and kept seeing over and over that he only liked me for my boobs, so I asked if that was true. He looked pissed but never yelled. He told me that he doesn't feel like I can make good decisions on my own. I felt like he thought I was a child. I told him that I thought I made a mistake getting this done. He said that's why he questions my decision-making ability. I even asked if he would want me to get implants to get my size back. He told me that it's not even about that anymore and told me to please stop getting surgeries done unless a doctor tells me to. I feel like I don't have any dignity anymore. I never would have thought about getting implants a year ago, but now I'm seriously considering it. I don't want to get a divorce. I love H so much, but I feel like he's done with me. I feel like we are too far off the rails to get back on anymore. He was the greatest thing to happen to me, and now he doesn't want anything to do with me. I asked him if he was still going to divorce me. He told me that he didn't know, but I should get my affairs in order. I just want to know, has anybody come back from something like this? How do I convince him that I can be trusted to make good decisions? Wife, I effed up. I'm owning that. I want him back. The wife. I always knew deep down that I made a mistake as soon as I saw my chest for the first time. I had this little feeling that wouldn't go away that I just ruined a great part of me. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Niece ran away from her abusive mom and came to me crying at midnight, with her bags packed. Now Sil and Mill are threatening to sue me for kidnapping, but I won't send her back. My 36-year-old female sister-in-law, Debbie, 42, has a 16-year-old daughter, Robin. Debbie and I have never been friends, but we have always been civil to each other. Robin and I, however, have always gotten along incredibly well, and she frequently refers to me as her favorite person in the family. We have a lot of things in common, and I think that's one of the reasons why we get along so well. Plus, I also work with kids around her age since I'm a high school counselor, so I know about their likes and dislikes and how to get along with them. So I guess that helps as well. My husband and I got married 4 years ago, but we have been together for almost 6 years. Initially, Robin and I were not that close because she was very shy, but around 2 years back, we started talking about some TV show that both of us were watching and were really into, and that's when we started getting along. After a couple of months, she started opening up to me and told me that she had been having a lot of problems with Debbie. She confided in me that her mother was very difficult to get along with, and it had always been that way in the past, but recently things had gotten much worse. Robin wanted to go to Juilliard because she was quite a skilled violinist, but Debbie thought that music was a waste of time and wanted to focus on pulling up her grades and becoming a lawyer just like her. It was one of the classic passion or career debates that has been going on for ages, but I really thought that they would be more open-minded than that, since we're living in the 21st century. I don't want to exaggerate, but Robin really is extremely talented, and it would be a waste of her talents to not pursue a career as a violinist in a professional capacity. I had tried my best to console Robin and be there for her whenever she was too frustrated with the situation at home, because her father really didn't want any part of this, and her mother was too dominating for anybody else to stand up against her either. She was basically fighting with her mom on her own and trying to get her to understand where she was coming from, but it was getting very difficult for her. I tried to sympathize with her as much as I could, but that was really the most that I could do. I had even suggested that maybe I could talk to Debbie, but Robin herself told me not to do that because that would only make the situation worse, since Debbie did not appreciate other people meddling in their personal affairs. So all I could do was just be there for her and tell her that things are going to be all right, even though I felt really bad for her and I wish I could do something. This had been going on for the past couple of months, and recently things got very ugly, and because of that, I'm in a tough spot at the moment. So, for the past 3 months, my husband has been working on a project which requires him to stay in Ohio for most of the month. He only comes home on alternate weekends, but thankfully he'll be done with this by the end of this month. The point is, I've mostly had the house to myself and have been living on my own. Robin knew that and had been visiting me pretty often to spend some time with me because apparently that brought her peace. She talked to me like a friend, and I would try to give her advice just like I would to any other student. In the past few weeks, she had apparently been having a lot of fights with her mother, and things were getting really heated in their household. Apparently, Debbie had started interrupting her while she was practicing and telling her to get out of the house if she wanted to play the violin so badly, because she was not going to entertain this BS in her household. Then they would argue, and Debbie would insult her and tell her that she was just going to be an unemployed burden on the family in the future if she continued to disobey her mother. I could understand how it was so frustrating. So I was aware that things were only getting worse with time, and I had been feeling quite worried for her. And then last night, Robin showed up at my house at around half an hour past midnight. I was quite shocked to see her there because it was quite late and it was a school night on top of that. To add to my surprise, she also had a bunch of bags with her, and she was crying like a baby. As soon as I opened the door to her, she literally broke down on the doorstep. I had to actually lift her and bring her inside because it was freezing outside, and I also brought her bags inside since she wasn't even in a state to stand up on her own. It was very evident that she had been crying for a really long time because her eyes were all red and puffy. Once she was inside, she continued to cry, and I let her because I knew that something terrible must have happened, because otherwise she would never show up in such a state and so late in the night. After around 15 minutes, she finally seemed to calm down a bit. Then I finally asked her what exactly had happened because I was very concerned, and she finally told me that she had decided to leave her house. I was not surprised because, from whatever I had heard, I was impressed that she had even managed to stay with somebody like Debbie for so long in the first place. And then Robin started telling me exactly what had happened that day. So apparently, they had received the results of a test that they had taken a couple of days back. It was a math test, and math isn't really Robin's strongest suit, from what she told me. And as somebody who used to be really bad at math in high school as well, I don't really blame her. Anyway, she managed to scrape by and got a C- on the test, which, according to her, was good enough because honestly she has been bad at math her entire life, and her other grades kind of made up for everything, she thought. Debbie wouldn't be surprised, but when she came back home with the test, Debbie was furious and completely lost her mind. She started blaming Robin and the violin for her grades, which was kind of unfair because she was pretty decent at everything else. She was averaging a B grade, and that's not really that bad. But Debbie didn't really seem to care about any of that and started yelling at Robin as soon as she told her that she had a C in math. Robin fought back because she was really frustrated with the way she was being treated by her mother. That argument just got worse, and after a point, Debbie went upstairs and Robin followed her. She barged into her room with Robin right behind her. Then Debbie grabbed her violin and started smashing it to the ground. Robin tried to stop her and grabbed her arm, but Debbie, for some reason, decided to push her back and continued breaking the violin to bits while Robin cried. Her father was at work at the time, but Robin told me that even if he had been there, she highly doubted if he could stand up for her anyway. After the damage was done, Debbie literally just walked away without another word, and Robin just sat there in her room crying until her father came back home. Even after her dad came back, it took him almost half an hour to finally come check up on her, and then when he finally came to talk to her, all he said was that he would buy her a new one, but she had to promise that she would get better grades, and only then would he be able to buy her something because otherwise Debbie would never approve of it. She had already been miserable, and when her dad said that, she finally lost it. Apparently, Robin had a bag packed anyway after her last fight with her mother, and after this incident, she decided that she could no longer live with them anymore. So after they had fallen asleep, she snuck out of the house, got a cab, and came straight to my place because she felt like I was the only person she could trust. On the one hand, I was happy that she had chosen me to be her safe space, but on the other hand, I was quite worried about what was going to happen in the future. However, I did not want Robin to worry about any of this that night while she was already so miserable, so I told her to go to sleep and not think about any of this for a while. After she fell asleep, I finally called my husband and told him all about this. I had been keeping him updated on the situation with Debbie and Robin, and he had known how difficult it had been for the kids so far. He also said that he was not surprised that Debbie was acting so psychotic because, right from childhood, she had always been a bit of a control freak, but this was just taken to another level and it was not acceptable in the slightest. He told me that I should let Robin stay with me and not worry about what other people might have to say about this. Once I had spoken to him, I felt more sure about my decision, and that was it. But then this morning, Debbie and her husband showed up at my house really early and demanded that I tell Robin to go home with them. They said that they had spoken to all of their relatives after they had woken up and discovered that Robin was not in her room, and they were aware of the fact that she spent quite a lot of time at my place after school. So they knew that I was helping her hide out here, but now they wanted me to let her go home. Debbie was furious, and I could see it, but I decided to stand my ground, and I told them that Robin was not willing to see them at the moment and that the way she had behaved with her was downright psychotic. So I did not think it was a good idea for her to be around such a sensitive kid at a time when she was already feeling so miserable. When I said that, Debbie started yelling at me and got all up in my face, saying that I was nobody to judge her because I was not Robin's mother, so I should stop trying to act that way. I tried to be as respectful as possible and kept my anger under control. I tried to explain to her that I had not forced Robin to come to me, but instead Robin herself had shown up at my place, and now, as a responsible adult, it was my duty to keep her safe. She kept yelling at me, and her husband tried to defuse the situation and spoke to me politely, trying to tell me that this was a personal matter within their family and I should not involve myself in any of this. So I had to explain to him that I did not do this myself, but their daughter had been confiding in me for the past couple of months, and as someone with a conscience, I just couldn't help but take her in, and now she would only go back if and when she felt like it. It wasn't my choice. It was completely up to Robin, and I was going to respect that. I had already told Robin to stay put in the guest room and not come out as soon as I heard the bell ringing furiously, but she still decided to come out when things started getting a little too loud in the living room. I was not expecting that, and as soon as she came out of the room, I told her to go back inside and I would deal with this on my own. But she still stood there, and even though I could see that she was literally shaking like a leaf, she still squared up to Debbie and told her to leave because she did not want to go back home with them. She announced that she wanted to stay here with me and she didn't even want to see them around anymore. I'm not going to lie. At that point, all of us were shocked because, like I said in the beginning, Robin was a very shy kid and generally quiet. This was quite unexpected, but I was glad that she was finally standing up for herself, even though it kind of backfired on me because, when Robin made that announcement, Debbie turned to me and started accusing me of manipulating and brainwashing her because apparently she thought that I was trying to steal her daughter away from her since I could not have kids of my own. I've got to say it was a crazy and wild theory to say out loud, since I think pretty much everybody knows that it was my choice to get married late and not have children of my own. Everybody has asked me about it, and I've always made things very clear. I'm not saying that I don't enjoy having Robin here, but I would just not like having to raise a baby of my own. It was as simple as that, and whatever she said it was just not true. Anyway, after yelling at me for a bit, she decided to leave after she realized that no amount of yelling was going to get her daughter back to her. And then I received a phone call from my mother-in-law a few hours after Debbie left, and she started screaming at me almost immediately. It was quite unprecedented because I had a good relationship with my in-laws, and I did not expect them to be so unfeeling. Anyway, I could hear that all three of them were on the phone, including Debbie. My mother-in-law and Debbie screamed at me about how heartless and selfish I was being. They said that my only duty would have been to send Robin back home as soon as she had shown up at my door, and then I should have let her parents deal with this situation, but instead I was too busy trying to be the savior. Then my father-in-law told me that they were going to give me a couple of days to think things over and send Robin back home, but if I didn't do that, they would not have any other choice but to sue me. Now I know that they don't have a legal leg to stand on and they can't exactly do that, but I just wanted to make sure that I'm doing the right thing. So I dare not send my sister-in-law's daughter home after she came to me crying in the middle of the night. Date 1. So after my father-in-law said that they were going to sue me, I was kind of scared, and I posted here to ask if I was doing the right thing or not, and the response was pretty overwhelming. So we're sticking together. I also spoke to my husband, and he said that he's going to speak to his family and tell them to back off because, right now, it's Robin's decision where she wants to stay, and after the way that Debbie has treated her daughter, she has no right to make any demands. I haven't told Robin about the phone call because I don't want her to freak out and panic. She's already pretty anxious about everything, and I don't want to make the situation worse for her. Anyway, my husband said that he was going to speak to his parents after work today, and tell them that I'm not going to be sending Robin back home. He also said that he's coming back home this weekend, so if there's any more trouble with his family, he's going to deal with it in person. He gets off work in a couple of minutes, so I'm just going to wait and see what happens. Also, just in case they actually did approach a lawyer, I have told my lawyer as well about this entire situation so that, in case they actually file a lawsuit against me for anything, I can defend myself and I'm not caught off guard. I was very stressed out in the morning, if I'm being honest, but after reading the comments on my original post, I am a little calmer now because I know that I'm doing the right thing. I will keep you guys updated on the situation with Robin since a lot of people seem to really care about what's going on with her. It's kind of touching even though we don't really know each other. But then people seem to care so much. Update 2. So it's almost midnight right now. Robin is asleep, and a couple of minutes ago I got off a phone call with my husband. He told me that he had spoken to his parents and told them that they could not file any sort of lawsuit against me, and if they did, he would make sure that we went no contact with them. He explained to them that Debbie had been mistreating Robin and I knew about it, which is why I had taken her in. If I had ever thought that Robin was in the wrong here, I would have sent her back home and made her clear the air with her mother, but that's not the case here. But they just refused to see things from my point of view and kept saying that this was between Debbie and Robin and I should have just sent her back home instead of encouraging this nonsense. They think that this is Debbie's personal family affair and I have no right to meddle in this, which is so ridiculous because, once again, I have to remind you guys that the only reason I got dragged into any of this was because Robin came to me since she thought that she could trust me more than anybody else in the family. I think that speaks a lot about their family. My in-laws were pretty bent on whatever they believed and even told my husband that if he was on my side on this, then they had nothing to talk about anymore since he had made his priorities very clear. They even tried to make him feel guilty for taking my side and said that they had never expected something like this out of him because he had always been a good son to them, but now it seemed like he was trying to be diplomatic and defend something that was very wrong just to keep me out of trouble. So while my husband had tried to be nice and polite to them and discuss things in a civilized manner, after they said that, he got into a fight with them. Honestly, I really don't understand why my in-laws are acting like this because I think I had mentioned earlier that they have always had a very good relationship with me, so this is very unexpected, and I think they should realize that Debbie is not the kind of wonderful woman that they think of her to be. I feel like they have been brainwashed against me. But even then there's no excuse to act like this and make me the villain in a situation where I'm clearly trying to help their granddaughter. Anyway, all things said and done, my husband ended up fighting with his parents over this, and after that he told them that they were free to do whatever they wanted. But he knew that we were doing the right thing and so he was not scared of anything. So now, if they want to come after me legally, they are free to do that. Update 3. So it was a pretty hectic day today. Yesterday, Robin had decided to skip school, and I had taken a day off from work because we were still trying to process everything that was going on. But today I had to go to work and she had to go to school. She goes to a different school than the one that I work at, but thankfully it was on my way, so I dropped her off and then I went on my way. But then I received a phone call in the middle of the day from her school telling me to come pick her up because apparently something really concerning had happened and they didn't want to discuss this on the phone. They just wanted me to come over as quickly as I could and then take her home. I guess you guys can imagine how scared I was when I received that phone call, and I immediately texted this to my husband, quickly explained the situation to my coworkers, and then left. When I got to her school, she was in the principal's office and was crying really hard again. As soon as she saw me, she hugged me and said that she was going to go back home and she was not going to be a burden on me anymore. I was very confused and had no idea what to say to that. So I just told her that she was not a burden on me and that we could discuss it when we got home. I just needed to know what had happened. At that moment, I could see that she was hysterical, and I wasn't going to get anything sensible out of her. So I sat her back down after comforting her for a while and then spoke with the principal. Apparently, she had a mental breakdown in the middle of class because she had received a bunch of texts from her parents. It led to a full-blown panic attack, and she had to be taken to the nurse because of it. So it happened in the middle of her literature class, and they generally had a rule that students were not allowed to check their phone during class, but she had taken out her phone just because it had been buzzing so frequently. Her teacher had told her to turn it off, so that's why she had taken out her phone, but as soon as she opened it and seemed to read something on the screen, she started crying in the middle of class and literally fell to the floor because of how hard she was crying. That was extremely concerning. So her literature teacher had a couple of her friends take her to the nurse's office, and she kept crying all the way there and hasn't stopped since. They didn't even know how to deal with any of this, and they were about to call her parents, but she insisted that they call me instead, and that's why I was here. They said that Robin's friends had said that the texts were from her parents, and since school staff were not allowed to check phones and other personal belongings, they had just called me up to directly deal with the issue and take her home since this was too intense for them to deal with. So I went to Robin, and I made her unlock her phone so I could read the texts that had caused her to break down like this, and of course they were from Debbie and her husband. The two of them had added her back to the group and said that they were going to file a lawsuit against me, which explained why Robin had said that she was going to go back home and not be a burden on me anymore. They also said that they were going to make sure that they brought her back home by hook or by crook and were going to ensure that after this she never touched the violin or any other musical instrument again. And the two of them had even had the audacity to threaten her by saying that if she spoke up about any of this to anybody, they were going to ruin her life. I was furious when I read those messages, and they were just a bunch of hateful messages where they were calling her names, telling her that she was ungrateful and selfish, and now everybody who was taking her side was going to have to pay the price for it. I could understand how that could cause her to have a mental breakdown because she was already in such a fragile state of mind ever since she had left home. This could cause anybody to break down. So I told her that everything was going to be fine and she was not a burden on me. She did not need to worry about any of this, and we were going to have it all sorted out. But she just kept crying, so I helped her get to the car, and we drove back home. Once we got home, I told her to get some rest and made her something to eat, so she could calm down a little. Right now it's evening, and she has been sleeping for the past 3 hours, so I'm feeling a bit relieved now. I have spoken to my husband about this, and he has suggested that maybe we could get her legally emancipated from her parents and get a restraining order against them because clearly Debbie and her husband would not stop at anything to harass her and make her live life according to their terms. It was getting really nasty too because it's not normal for kids her age to break down like this. I'm just hoping that things get better with her mental state for now, and I'm also going to have to start looking for therapists. She really needs the help, I can tell, and my husband is coming back on Friday instead of Saturday just because of Robin. We are both really concerned about her, and I think the sooner that we deal with this, the better it is for her in the long run. Update for Hey everyone! It's been a couple of weeks since my last update. So to fill you guys in, that weekend that my husband came back home, we had a proper discussion about all of this, and we decided that we were going to help Robin get legally emancipated from her parents. When we suggested this to her, we were not sure if she would be open to the idea, but she agreed almost immediately. Apparently, the thing with the violin and the amount of control that Debbie wanted to exercise over her future was just the tip of the iceberg. Debbie was a complete psycho helicopter mother who wanted to control every single aspect of her daughter's life, and Robin was more than glad to get away from her. The kind of verbal abuse that Robin has faced all her life is unimaginable and unforgivable, and to think that she wasn't even able to talk to anybody about this for so long. In fact, one of the major reasons that she hadn't been able to speak about this so far was because Debbie and her father had forbidden her from discussing anything that happened in the house with anybody else in the family. When she was younger, she had tried to speak about all of this and the kind of pressure she was under to her grandparents, but they had, in turn, complained to Debbie, and she had received the beating of her lifetime. So after that, she stopped trusting her family members, but then I was really nice and she felt like she could trust me, which she was right about. Anyway, after we learned that there was much more to this, we didn't wait much. So we immediately spoke to a lawyer and got the proceedings started. It's still ongoing as of now, but we are positive that we will be able to get her legally emancipated. Things are going in our favor, and Debbie's psychotic behavior during our meetings is not helping either. I hope that continues because, honestly, she doesn't deserve to be around Robin. My husband is also home permanently now and doesn't have to worry about him going to Ohio since he's done with the project there. Also, a lot of you might be wondering whether Robin got a new violin or not, and yeah, she did. We bought her one a couple of weeks ago. It's a better one than what she had previously. Another surprising thing that's been happening is that her grades are also getting better while she's been living with us. It's too soon to tell, but I think she might start averaging an A grade if this continues, and that will be pretty great. So she's pretty happy, and we're hoping that things get better for us in the future. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Guy friend told my boyfriend we had an affair because I rejected him, and now my boyfriend of 3 years dumped me, even though I never cheated. I, 25F, my friend, 24M, told my boyfriend, 25M, we were having an affair, but we're not. My boyfriend doesn't believe me. I want to say, to start off with, that I realize how messed up a situation this is, and I understand why my boyfriend would be upset and even suspicious. But I can't believe he doesn't trust me. So I've been with my BF, Paul, for 3 years. In the beginning of our relationship, Paul had some issues with trust. He had been cheated on in the past. I made it clear right away that I had never cheated on anyone, that I would not, and that I understood if he had trust issues from the past, but that it was a deal breaker for me to be with someone who couldn't trust me. He has, since those early days, been really good about it, and throughout our 3 years together, I think I've earned his trust. I've always been honest with him and never cheated on him. He's asked to see conversations of mine that I've had with male friends twice over those 3 years, and I've obliged. The second time, however, I made it clear to him that I was very unhappy to be treated as though I was acting suspiciously and did not deserve privacy with my friends when he had no reason at all to think I was being shady. I said that if he didn't trust me because of something I had said or done, I was 100% happy to have a conversation about that, to discuss it and to address any issues he had. But if I had done literally nothing to cause suspicion, then I expected him to trust me. He agreed with me, said that I had done nothing, and never asked again. One of those conversations he asked about was with my friend, Roger. Roger had, 2 years before I started dating Paul, confessed feelings of love for me. I told him I wasn't interested, and that was that. By the time I was seeing Paul, I had absolutely no reason to think things were anything but platonic between Roger and myself. A week ago, Roger and I got together for coffee again. I want to stress that, before this happened, I had literally no reason at all to think he had held on to those feelings. At the cafe, Roger suddenly went on this impassioned monologue about how much he still loved me, how Paul was a terrible boyfriend and I should dump him and be with Roger, how loyal Roger was, how perfect we were together, etc. I was pretty much silent through this whole speech because I was so surprised and uncomfortable, but when he stopped, I told him, probably not as strongly as I should have, but I didn't know what to do, that I loved Paul, that I was absolutely not leaving Paul, and that I needed to go home immediately. I was shaken up by the whole thing, so I took my time getting home to calm down, but by the time I got home, I found that Roger had sent a long, utterly insane Facebook message to Paul detailing how much he loved me, that we were destined to be together, and heavily implying, but not outright stating, that Roger and I had been carrying on an affair for weeks. I don't know why he did this. I have no explanation. Paul believes it completely. He has listened to my explanation of things but thinks I am lying. He doesn't want to see me or talk to me at all anymore. I'm completely devastated that Paul would believe this Facebook message over me. I'm horrified that my relationship with him has ended like this. I'm embarrassed that now I'm being seen as a cheater and a woman who slept around on Paul. I'm utterly hateful toward Roger. It's been a week, and I can't convince Paul to talk to me. I know he had those trust issues in the past, but I really believed we were long past them. What do I do? Comments where Opie responded before the update. Comment 1. I think your answer is kind of nested in what you wrote. You find it a deal breaker if someone is unable to trust you. Your boyfriend, in the context of a my word versus their word situation without there being any evidence besides Roger's word to suggest you were cheating, and with this set against your stated position that you haven't ever done so, has chosen to believe someone else over you. It seems he does not trust you, and you've just said yourself what you decided the consequences of that would be. Opie, I didn't think of it this way until you put it so clearly. I guess you're right. Even if I spoke to Paul now, I would always remember that he didn't believe me or trust me. I'd always be scared of it happening again. Comment 2. Do hold on to that. You've been together 3 years, and all it took was a single Facebook message to make him completely believe that you've been cheating. He's insecure and doesn't trust you, and that's what's doomed the relationship, not anything you've done. I'd remove any trace of both of them from your life and move on. You deserve so much better than this. Edit. Just want to add the fact that Roger said that he's in love with you to Paul makes this even more unbelievable to me. He gets a message from a guy who is obviously obsessed with you and decides to trust him over you. I'd be pissed if that was me. Roger obviously has every reason to try and break the two of you up. Comment 3. Are you kidding me? If it was the other way around and she got a Facebook message from someone who was previously in love with her, this whole sub would be screaming not to trust him. I agree that this is a deal breaker for her, but you can't dismiss her boyfriend's feelings that easily. None of this is your fault. Your friend is nutty. However, I think the lesson here is, when a friend declares feelings for you, it is smarter not to maintain that relationship. Everybody is not as weird as your friend, who I hope you are now not speaking to, but it is at least awkward. I don't think you can do much of anything except hope Paul will come around. Opie, I haven't had any contact at all with Roger, and I don't think I could ever forgive him. Weirdly enough, Roger has not at all attempted to contact me since this happened. He sent that Facebook message to Paul and now has gone totally silent and not attempted to contact either me or Paul. Comment 4. So this guy professed his love and you kept him around the last few years? Do you keep any of these other men hovering around you waiting for their chance? I don't blame your boyfriend. If I got that message, it would take a lot of convincing that it wasn't true. For someone to confess to an affair that didn't happen is quite rare indeed, and even if untrue, I'd be mad that I had to be involved in spillover drama from your friends. Comment 5. I don't blame her boyfriend for his reaction because most people don't do crazy things like pretend they had an affair with someone, but I don't think it was necessarily wrong for her to continue being friends with this guy. A friend once professed his love to me. I turned him down. We kept our distance for a little, then had some awkward interactions, then went back to being friends. We were fine for years, and he never tried to sabotage any of my relationships. We lived happily ever after as friends in relationships with other people. I think most normal people tend to move on after rejection. Opie. I definitely hear what you're saying, but I just want to point out I never believed feelings would magically evaporate. Roger said he loved me 5 years ago. We were distant from each other for about a year after he told me he loved me, then reconnected through mutual friends and were friends for a year before I dated Paul. During that year, he acted totally platonically around me, and I guess I thought he had had enough time to get over his feelings. He's been totally platonic as well for the 3 years I've been with Paul. Obviously, I was wrong, and you are right about how I should have cut him out, but I didn't think the feelings would just disappear. I thought the year we weren't really in contact made them go away. However, Paul already has heard the whole and complete story, including what Roger said 5 years ago. He thinks I'm lying. However, when I say there is nothing between Roger and I now, should I still push the issue with Paul and try and make him talk to me? He's heard everything already. He just refuses to believe me. Update. I want to thank everyone so much commenting before I post what happened. I just want to address a few things that I didn't get to in the first post. First, Paul knew I was having coffee with Roger. It wasn't some kind of secret thing. Paul has female friends he has lunch or coffee with alone too. So this isn't unusual in our relationship. Second, Paul did not know that Roger had said he loved me 5 years ago. I definitely made a mistake not telling him that, but honestly, it was so long ago and, to my obviously wrong knowledge, was old history. We did not extensively discuss our past, so there wasn't really a natural point where it would have come up, and it just never occurred to me to say anything. Finally, Roger and I did not have a particularly intense friendship. It's not like we were texting constantly or best buddies. We hung out occasionally and would be in touch if something relevant came up, but we didn't just chat randomly. Anyway, with that having been said, I took the advice of some Redditors and, when I was calmer, Facebook messaged Roger asking him why he lied. He responded with, "What do you mean?" At which point, I started pressing him harder. He responded only with one-word answers and honestly didn't reply to most of my messages at all, no matter how much I asked, and never actually said any definitive statement of, "Yes, I lied for such and such reason." Finally, I sent him a definitive statement that said I'd never had an affair with him, that I was incredibly hurt and angry that our friendship was over, and that he was never to contact me again. He replied, "Okay," and that was that. I sent the entire Facebook conversation to Paul, not thinking it would help save us, but just to try and clear my name. In the message, I asked him if Roger's reactions to my questions and my response to Roger was in line with what he would expect if Roger's accusations were true. Paul didn't respond that day, but the next day he called me. Paul basically said that the more he thought about it, the more he believed me, and that the conversation between Roger and I helped him believe that Roger's responses didn't make sense and that he now thought nothing had gone on. However, he said that despite that, the trust was broken between us, and he couldn't be with me. I got pretty mad and yelled at him, asking why I was being punished for nothing, and he just basically disengaged from the discussion. Not my finest moment, I know. I was just so overwhelmed with frustration. We did eventually end the conversation calmly, if not amiably, and he is dropping off the stuff that I had left at his apartment later this week. I learned my lesson. Not only will any declaration of interest by a friend end that friendship forever, but I will never date someone who has trust issues or a history of being cheated on again. I'm sure I come across as a little bitter about this, but honestly, I feel like there was absolutely no point to my fidelity and honesty during those 3 years. I got treated like a cheater whether or not I cheated, and both Paul and I ended up hurt and alone despite being 100% faithful. Better to end up alone or stick to FWB than end up investing another 3 years in a relationship to have this be the conclusion. TLDR, Paul and I are done. Roger and I are done. Now for some comments where Opie replied. Comment 1. I can't understand Roger. How does he live with himself? I could never do that to someone. Opie. I suspect, based on what I know of Roger, that he got angry when I rejected him and impulsively sent the message to Paul. He's not usually a psycho, so I'm betting that, after a bit, he realized how terrible what he had done was, and that is why he avoided me / refused to talk to me when I Facebook messaged him. Why he wouldn't apologize or try and make it right, I have no idea. Comment 2. Not only will any declaration of interest by a friend end that friendship forever. This is just a side note. The main thing is you're rid of both these sources of drama. Good for you. But I'm a guy who has declared interest in people and then gone on to be good friends after being rejected, as in really just friends. So I choose carefully because perhaps you'll write some decent people off if you have a blanket rule. I totally get why you feel that way, though. Opie. I thought that this would be possible, but honestly, I got a ton of comments, and still I'm getting them saying how ridiculous I was to ever imagine I could continue to have someone in my life who once confessed feelings for me. A lot of people have pointed out that by allowing Roger to be a friend or a part of my life at all was a huge mistake, and frankly, looking at the result, I have to agree. I may write off some decent people, which would be a shame, but this has convinced me that I can't allow anyone in my life that might be holding, or have at some point held, feelings for me if I don't return them. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Found out my wife of 5 years was cheating on me with her ex-fiancé. When he died and she had a breakdown, now she's playing the victim in our divorce. When I first met my wife, we were head over heels in love with each other, and both of us knew almost instantly that we were meant to be together. My wife ended up getting pregnant while we were still dating, and we figured the right thing to do would be to get married. Everything felt natural for the first 5 years of our relationship. We were happily married, and we had a child together that we both loved dearly. I had a great job, and she stayed at home and took care of our child. Before we got together, she was actually engaged to another man. From what I was told, she broke things off with him a couple of weeks before I met her. She told me it just didn't feel right, and she didn't want to be with him, so she broke up with him and moved out of his house. After that, she went out to a bar with her best friend, and that's where she met me. I always thought the timing of it was perfect. I thought it was fate. Had she not broken things off with that guy, we would have never been together, and I wouldn't have had the perfect life that I did. I travel quite a bit for my job, which was never much of an issue with us. At the most, I would be gone from home for 2 or 3 days a month, and there were always weekdays. I was adamant with my employer that I wanted to be able to spend the weekends with my family so we could make memories together. The first instance that I noticed something was off was when I was on a short work trip. I had to fly into Montana for a meeting with a client, but they ended up canceling at the last minute while I was there due to a family emergency. I decided I'd take the extra time and surprise my family with a weekend trip to the beach or something. I got on the next flight home and called my wife when I arrived at the airport. She didn't answer the first couple of times that I called. That was very unlike her. She would always be by her phone, and not answering was strange. Eventually, she picked up the phone to see what was going on. She seemed annoyed that I called her. She rarely ever had that tone with me, especially when I was out of town. I asked her if everything was okay, and she kind of snapped at me to tell me that it was. I told her that I was in an Uber on my way home, and she seemed shocked. I heard a lot of shuffling around in the background, but at the time, I assumed she was moving around. I never thought anything suspicious was happening. She got off the phone with me, and when I arrived home, she was very disheveled. Her cheeks were pink like she had been running around, and she was wearing some pajama shorts and a sweater that was on inside out. I knew that being alone with the kid was sometimes exhausting, but it didn't seem like that was the issue. I asked her if everything was all right, and she told me that it was. She was just surprised to see me so early. I told her about my plan to spend the weekend by the beach, and she immediately rushed off to start packing so we could leave in the morning. She seemed relieved to get away from me. I unpacked my work stuff and went to pack some garments for the trip, and I found a black sock that I didn't think was mine. I picked it up and showed it to my wife, asking what it was. It was a suspicious thing to find. She was confused about what I was asking, swearing that the sock was mine. I'm not going to lie. She was the one who handled all of the laundry in the house. She bought a lot of my clothes and probably knew my wardrobe better than I did. I told her that I didn't think it was mine, but she was steadfast in saying that it was mine. Eventually, I gave up and I believed what she said. I figured she would know better than me about it. Several months passed, and I didn't notice anything else going on. I had completely forgotten about the sock thing by that point. One day, I came home from work early and found my wife in our bathtub crying. There was no water in the bath, and she was fully clothed, just hiding in the bathtub crying. I immediately rushed over to her and asked her what was going on, checking on her to make sure she was okay. She was almost nonverbal and unable to communicate what was happening to me. I was freaking out and rushed around the house to check on our kid to make sure they were all right. I called her mom and asked what was going on. She didn't know either. My first instinct was that somebody had died, but when I spoke to her mother, the person who would have likely elicited that reaction out of her, I started to think something else was going on. I checked our Ring camera footage to make sure nobody broke into the house, but I didn't find anything there. The only thing that was left for me to do was look at her phone and see if that was any sign of what was going on. It wasn't something I was doing to try to catch her in anything. My wife was hysterical and crying, and I needed to figure out what was going on so I could help her. She had it with her in the bathtub, and I went over to her to grab it from her hands. She put up a little bit of a fight giving it to me. I unlocked it, and the screen that it was open to was a message exchange between her and a man we will call Tim. The messages were all very romantic in nature. They were telling each other that they loved each other, that they missed each other, and how excited they were to be together when I went away the following week. I didn't know what to do. My wife was hysterically crying in the bathtub, and I cared about her, and that was heartbreaking to see, but I had also just found out that she was cheating on me. That didn't even explain why she was crying the way that she was. Their messages didn't end with a breakup or anything like that. While I was looking, a message from her best friend, let's call her Carol, came through. I didn't read the message, but I called her right away and asked her if she knew about what was going on. I told her that I knew all about Tim, and I just needed to know why my wife was crying in the bathtub. Carol told me that Tim was my wife's ex-fiancé. They had reconnected and were seeing each other. The reason my wife was crying was because Tim had died. I felt so many different emotions at that time. It's honestly so unexplainable how I felt. I was angry and heartbroken about the affair, but I felt for my wife because I did love her, but I was so mad at her. I wanted to reach out and help her, but I also wanted to be as far away from her as I possibly could. I told Carol that she needed to come over and tend to my wife because I didn't think I could. I walked out of the bathroom, and my wife yelled after me, begging for me to come back and be with her. I packed a bag for our kids so we could go stay at my parents' house for a few days. They didn't need to be around my wife while she was mourning. It would likely be pretty jarring for them. When Carol came over, I left. She tried to explain to me what was happening before I could leave, but I didn't want to listen to her either. Carol was my wife's best friend, but we were on good terms. I would joke around with Carol, and I invited her out for dinner and drinks with us all the time. I felt betrayed that she even lied to me about the affair. I explained everything to my parents when we were at their house, and they gave me some really good advice about the matter. I felt bad about my decision to walk away from her, but they told me that she already made the decision for me. Even though I knew she was mourning, I couldn't be with her. She betrayed our marriage, and the only thing left for me to do was leave her. She made her choice, and I wasn't responsible for her emotions after she hurt me. I gave her the weekend at home alone to deal with everything she had to. When I returned the following week to gather some of my belongings, she begged for the chance to explain herself to me and work on the problems. I told her that there was no explaining that she was telling another man that she loved him and sleeping with him behind my back. However, I did find out that she actually was still engaged to her fiancé when we met. She and I had been dating for an entire month before she broke things off with him. I was supposed to just be a fling, but then he found out about me, and they broke up. I don't know if she thought that was going to make the situation any better, but it certainly didn't. I knew then that she had been a liar throughout the entirety of our marriage. I told her that I was leaving her and that there was no swaying my mind on the matter. I knew that she was still very emotional from Tim's death, but that wasn't my concern. I started filing for divorce, and as I was doing that, so many people from my life reached out to me and tried to make me out as a villain. My wife had been telling everybody that I left her after she found out somebody close to her died. She was withholding the fact that she found out the man she was cheating on me with died. I made sure to clarify that to everybody who reached out to me so they knew the truth. I wasn't going to let her lie about me and make everybody we knew think I was some awful man. After that, everybody saw how manipulative she could be, and from what I understand, she lost a lot of friends in our town. The only person who stuck by her was Carol, who was the only other person who knew about the affair when it was happening. We ended up getting divorced, and I kept the house and all of our assets. She moved in with her parents and comes by on the weekends to see our child. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.